to a larger bench. Do take us through the basic context of this petition before court. What was the Supreme Court really hearing?
Well, Nabila, just a small correction. Ahead of that, the Supreme Court has suggested that there are some issues involved that need to be considered by a larger bench, but we're still waiting for the final order from the Supreme Court, and it's unlikely that the order referring the matter to a larger bench will be passed today, because the Supreme Court's first going to take a look into exactly what issues are involved in this case. Because remember, this is not the bench that had heard the case the first time around. The first time around, it was a vacation bench of Justices Suryakant and Justice J.B. Partiwala that had taken up the matter. But now the matter has been listed before the Chief Justice of India, who is also retiring on the 26th of August. So in case this matter is referred to a larger bench, it is possible that the CJI might not be a part of it, because the hearing might go on until after his retirement is done. But having said that, the problem over here is that there are several issues involved in the multiple petitions that have now been filed before the Supreme Court, including issues of disqualification as well as who has the strength amongst the Shiv Sena, because what the Eknath Shinde faction is claiming is that there is no defection in this case because they have not left the party. They are still very much a part of the Shiv Sena. In fact, they are calling themselves the real Shiv Sena, and they are saying that speaking out against the leadership of the party is not equivalent to leaving the party or indulging into defection. So that is their essential stand before the Supreme Court. And because these issues are all overlapping with each other, so it seems not possible at this stage that either of these issues can be decided in isolation. Whether it's the issue of disqualification or who has the numbers within the Shiv Sena, or even the administrative issues like electing the new chief whip or the legislative party leader. So keeping all of this in mind, the Supreme Court will take it up for consideration in the coming few days, because they've indicated that the matter will be coming up for hearing next on All
right. I'm going to try and patch Nalini on that. But here it's quite evident at this point, what we understand is that the Supreme Court is mulling over moving the case to a larger bench. The confirmation is yet to come. The hearing is yet underway. Anisha, they're tracking those developments in court. But the Supreme Court says that issues involved in the Maharashtra petitions need to be referred to a larger bench for consideration. This is what they're currently mulling over while they hear this matter. This, of course, leads us to believe that for now, there is no relief for Uddhav Thackeray. Remember, Eknath Shinde working on overdrive. In the meanwhile, he's already reached out to the Election Commission. He shot a letter asking, also highlighting that the Uddhav Thackeray appointed national executive of the Shiv Sena has also been dissolved, and that he has formed a new body. All of these developments, and in the latest, almost 12 MPs of the Shiv Sena now, out of the 16, have joined hands with the Shinde camp. So this certainly will be in favor of Eknath Shinde. If at all the matter in court will be heard by a larger bench, these developments will be closely looked into. Eknath Shinde certainly at this point has the might, has the support of the primary cadre, the rank and file of the party entirely. And it appears Uddhav Thackeray, for the moment, has received a setback with the court not favouring the pleas that he, or the petition that his camp has filed at least twice over. Nalini, who joins us for more on that. Nalini, a quick word from you. Eknath Shinde, like I did mention, currently on overdrive. All these developments will also work on the minds of the legal eagles in court. Here we're looking at Eknath Shinde reaching out to the Election Commission. He's already said that the National Executive Body of the Shiv Sena has been dissolved. He's formed a new body. Also, 12 out of the 17 MPs of the Shiv Sena joining hands with Eknath Shinde. This will work in favor of Eknath Shinde largely, isn't it?
Well, Nabila, considering the fact that there is going to be no change in the interim arrangement of things and status quo is likely to be maintained because there are no adverse orders from the Supreme Court, yes, it does seem like at least in the interim things will go in the favor of Eknath Shinde as well as the MLAs that are supporting him, because they are essentially currently the party in power. But at the same time, this entire scenario is also expected to play out before other forums like the Election Commission, where they might now go ahead and try to prove that they are the real Shiv Sena because they have the right number of office bearers, MPs, MLAs that are all backing them. But having said that, let me also highlight about how this matter is now going to proceed before the Supreme Court, because that's what's important. What the Supreme Court bench has said is that there are several issues that are involved in this matter, where several constitutional issues, which are much larger issues, need to be considered, which is why this matter is now likely to be referred to a constitution bench. At least a 5-judges bench, maybe more, depending on what the Supreme Court decides next week. Now, before any matter is referred to a constitution bench, the Supreme Court ensures that they identify the key issues that the bench has to consider. Because any aspect regarding constitutional provisions obviously has a large-scale impact across the country, which is why the Supreme Court delves into it deeply, which is why there's a larger bench of the Supreme Court considering these issues. So now, because the matter is going to be referred to the constitutional bench, before it can be done so, the main legal issues that the constitutional bench will have to look into will be identified by this bench headed by the Chief Justice of India, which is why they've asked all of the parties to file their submissions in the coming few days. So likely on next Thursday, the matter can be taken up again and key issues can be identified. After that, we can expect an order from the Supreme Court, either in part or the entire case altogether, to be referred to a constitution bench, because the Chief Justice of India did say that there is no point of us hearing this matter and then a constitutional bench having to hear it all over again. So it's very likely that all of the petitions, including all of the issues in the Maharashtra political crisis, may be referred to a constitution bench. But that is something only that we will know next week. There are important repercussions that are expected of whatever the outcome of this case will be, especially regarding the aspects of anti-defection law, as well as the manner in which MLAs are now popularly being traded across political parties. So large-scale repercussions are expected, but all of that we know only once the Supreme Court comes out with its order, probably next week.
You know, at this point, we're looking at the Supreme Court looking at matters on various issues that both the Shinde camp and the Uddhav camp have filed, starting with the disqualification, the election of the chief whip, recognition of the party itself, and how Eknath Shinde became the chief minister in the first place. The Uddhav camp deeming this as illegal, saying that this was not right because they were he was at the helm of the party, Uddhav Thackeray. So Shinde taking over is not legal, according to him. So these are matters that need to be watched out in layers. But at the same time, don't you think this is redundant? We are already looking at the Maharashtra government that's formed. We already see Eknath Shinde, the chief minister. The cabinet is near forming. So what use is of a judgment of this nature?
Well, Nabila, there is possibly no possibility that it can be said that it's going to be redundant, because remember, in the very first hearing that had happened, on that very day, the Supreme Court had put it down in writing in their order that whatever happens in Maharashtra is all going to be subject to what the final outcome of the proceedings before the Supreme Court is going to be. So in accordance with the Supreme Court order, whatever the status quo is right now is in fact temporary. And before Eknath Shinde swore in as the CM, or before his MLAs took over the control of the government in Maharashtra along with the BJP, the Supreme Court had already passed its order saying that anything that happens will be subject to what the final outcome of the decision of the Supreme Court is going to be. Now, because the Supreme Court is going to delve into constitutional aspects regarding anti-defection law, and there is a lot of context that needs to be provided with respect to that also, because the Supreme Court has tried time and again come forth and not only strengthened the 10th schedule regarding the anti-defection law, but they have also specifically in the past spoken about how there is a need to change the procedure under the anti-defection law, where the speaker itself decides on the issue of disqualification. So now with the Supreme Court 5-judge bench actually going ahead and delving into these issues, like I told you earlier, the implications and the ramifications of it will be extremely large, which will definitely impact Maharashtra, because that is at the very crux and the center of all of these cases that are pending before the Supreme Court. Having said that, the Uddhav Thackeray faction is not refusing to back down whatsoever. Remember, even before the floor test had happened, they had rushed to the Supreme Court with an urgent plea trying to get the floor test stayed. So this is their last resort now to hope to gain back any power in Maharashtra until or unless they can convince the rebel MLAs to actually come back on their side. So because this is their last resort, and because the Supreme Court has now actually gone ahead and agreed to delve into these issues deeply. They are not going to leave any stone unturned. We can already see that through the lawyers that are representing them, senior advocates Kapil Sibal, Abhishek Manu Singhi, along with Devdutt Kamath, who has been regularly speaking to the media on behalf of the Uddhav Thackeray faction. So they are leaving no stone unturned in ensuring that they can get favorable orders from the Supreme Court in this matter, because ultimately whatever happens in Maharashtra is going to be subject to the final outcome of what the Supreme Court bench decides.
All right, so you say that there is certainly some glimmer of hope for Uddhav Thackeray and camp, if at all. And what do you see the possible outcomes here, Nalini? A quick word.
Well, Nabila, today not so much, because even though the Supreme Court has gone into a lot of important issues, but the orders that will be passed by the Supreme Court will not delve into all of them, because the Supreme Court, frankly, has not had the time to look into all of these issues. But some very important observations have come in from the Supreme Court. What they have said, however, is that next week they're going to conduct the hearing, because they also want to do it as early as possible, to look into exactly what issues should be referred to the Constitution bench. So that is one thing we can definitely expect, that at least some of the matters that are pending regarding the Maharashtra petitions are going to be referred to a larger bench for consideration. Will the bench that is going to be hearing the matter next week, which is the bench led by CJI N.V. Ramana, are they going to be looking at the more immediate issues, for example, the disqualification aspect, because that had specifically been stated by the Supreme Court in the first hearing, and Kapil Sibal has argued that the Supreme Court should not have delved into disqualification at all in accordance with the 10th schedule, because until a final decision by the Speaker is given, the Supreme Court, or any court for that matter, cannot interfere in disqualification proceedings. So will the smaller bench be looking into these aspects which are of immediate concern to the political parties is something that we still need to wait and watch out for. But no doubt, a lot of interesting developments, legal developments as well as political developments are expected in the coming few days. And like I said, the battle in Maharashtra is still not over. It's anybody's game, but it's now all up to the Supreme Court judges to decide that who actually emerges victorious.
Right. At the same time, Nalini, we see that Eknath Shinde has been working hard to try and get hold of the party entirely, the party symbol, to entirely be known as the face of the Shiv Sena. He wants to be the man leading the party. He says he is the real Shiv Sena. So when he's making these attempts and shooting off a letter to the Election Commission, and developments are happening on that front parallelly, which is why we ask, will the Supreme Court then possibly put a hold on these developments, on Eknath Shinde's attempt to take over the party entirely?
Well, Nabila, of course, we can't speculate to a great extent as to what the Supreme Court will do, but we can largely say that that's possibly not going to happen, mainly because the Supreme Court as well as the Election Commission are both constitutional bodies, and the Supreme Court judges are also holding a constitutional post. So they are not likely to interfere with proceedings before another constitutional bodies, because the proceedings before the Election Commission are going to happen in a completely different spectrum. Of course, they are going to be following a set procedure. They will have to prove their numbers, but all of that will happen before the Election Commission and not the Supreme Court. So it is possible that whatever the Election Commission decides, that can be challenged before the Supreme Court, and that can maybe be subject to judicial review, but not necessarily the proceedings that are yet to happen before the Election Commission.
Nalini Sharma, thank you very much. Of course, the Supreme Court hearing the matter for the moment. They're mulling over moving this to a larger bench. The complexities of this case need to be heard carefully, possibly hearing by next Wednesday. That's what the court has hinted at, but the hearing's still underway. We're going to continue tracking those developments. Coming up on the other side of a short break, Kerala NEET innerwear controversy now snowballs. BJP stages a protest, 5 arrested for humiliating aspirants. We bring to you the latest on the story right after a short break. Stay with us.
अरे आ गई। कैसा रहा दिन?
बहुत अच्छा।
कोई वीडियो गेम कवर करने गई थी ना?
वीडियो गेम नहीं माँ, Esports.
Esports?
माँ, Esports is just like any other competitive sport. इसमें ना वो सब फीलिंग्स है जो किसी भी और स्पोर्ट्स में है। इसमें इमोशन है, इसमें एंगर है, इसमें सैडनेस है, इसमें हैप्पीनेस है, इसमें कमराडरी है। ये सिर्फ गेम नहीं, ये ई स्पोर्ट्स का प्रीमियर लीग ESPL है।
There's an Ebola-like disease spreading in Ghana. It's the second time the disease has been detected. It's called the Marburg virus disease. WHO says that Marburg virus disease, which is also called MVD, is a severe, often fatal hemorrhagic fever. It's clinically similar to Ebola. Rosetta's fruit bats are considered the natural host for the Marburg virus. WHO investigated its source and found that African green monkeys imported from Uganda were the source of the first human infection. How fatal is it? The disease has an average fatality rate of around 50%, but its fatality depends on the virus strain, which can be low or as high as 88%. Symptoms can begin anytime between 2 to 21 days. MVD can manifest itself in the form of high fever, muscle aches, and severe headaches. On the third day, patients report abdominal pain, vomiting, severe watery diarrhea, and cramping. Between day 5 and 7, patients report bleeding from the nose and gums. Severe blood loss leads to death. There is no approved antiviral treatment or vaccine for MVD as of now, but it can be managed with supportive care. WHO says that dehydration with oral or intravenous fluids and treatment of specific symptoms can help prevent death. Now, NEET examination controversy in Kerala's Kollam district continues to send shockwaves. BJP student wing, ABVP, has led a massive stir in Kollam. NTA has constituted a fact-finding panel to look into the issue, and so far, 5 people have been arrested by the Kerala police in this matter. The National Testing Agency has distanced itself from the Kollam controversy, stating that its dress code doesn't permit any such removal of innerwears. Remember, 90 girl students were asked to remove their innerwears before taking their examinations. The students' parents complained. They, in fact, filed a formal complaint alleging that not 1 or 2, 90 girls, female students, were asked to remove their innerwear and keep it in a safe room until they complete their exams and then leave carrying it with them, not allowed to wear it inside the premises as well. That was the grouse put in the complaint copy.
വസ്ത്രമൊന്നും മാറാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഒരു സാധനം അപ്പം ഞങ്ങൾ വിശ്രമിക്കുന്ന റൂം തുറന്നു കൊടുത്ത് ഞങ്ങൾ ആ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ അവിടോട്ടാക്കല്ല. ഞങ്ങൾ ഒരു തെറ്റും ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല. ഞങ്ങൾക്കും ഇതുപോലെ 20 വയസ്സ് പ്രായമുള്ള മക്കളുമാരുള്ള അമ്മമാരെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഈ ഒരു ഉപകാരമേ ചെയ്തു കൊടുത്തോളൂ.
After NEET aspirants were asked to remove innerwear to gain access to an exam center in Kollam, the issue has snowballed into a raging controversy. The National Testing Agency has now formed a fact-finding committee. Earlier, protests broke out after the NTA called the medical aspirants' claim fictitious.
We're seeing massive protests across the state in the NEET controversy that erupted in Kerala's Kollam. I'm outside the Marthoma College where the incident took place on Sunday during the NEET exam. And as you can see in the visuals, massive protest is happening outside the college. We spoke to a lot of students who were telling us how horrible the experience was, how they were asked to, how they were forced to remove their inners when they protested. They asked them questions like, you need your exams, or is exams or this, what is more important to you?
Kollam police has arrested 5 persons, out of which 2 are staff members of the Marthoma College where the exams were held and 3 from the testing agency. The National Commission for Women has sought action by the police within 3 days. The controversy erupted after NEET aspirant claimed that she and 90 others were asked to remove their bras to enter the exam center.
I will face a difficulty at the time of checking in the inspection area. The metal detector beeped, so I was asked to remove my inner garments. Not only me, majority of the girl candidates were being asked to remove. We all did remove, it was losing our self-respect, and we went to the examination without it.
India Today spoke to another student. She backed these charges.
വളരെ ഗേൾസിന് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ സെക്യൂരിറ്റിയും പ്രൈവസിയും വേണ്ട സമയം കൂടിയായിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെ അണ്ടർ ഗാർമെൻറ്റ്സ് ഒക്കെ ഊരേണ്ടി വന്ന ഒരുപാട് കുട്ടികൾ പ്രൊട്ടസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തു. ആക്ച്വലി അവരിതൊരു റൂളായിട്ട് തന്നെയാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്, ഇതൊരു സ്ട്രിക്റ്റ് റൂളാണ്, നിങ്ങളിത് സഹകരിച്ചേ പറ്റുള്ളൂ എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ കമ്പൽ ചെയ്യായിരുന്നു. മെൻ്റലി എല്ലാവരും വളരെ ഡിപ്രസ്ഡ് ആക്കിയ ഒരു സിറ്റുവേഷൻ. കുറേ കുട്ടികൾ ഒരുപാട് സഫർ ചെയ്തു. എക്സാമിനെ വളരെ മോശമായി തന്നെ ഇത് ബാധിച്ചു.
The brazen violation of privacy in conduct of medical entrance tests has stunned the entire nation. Will someone be held accountable for the horror faced by the students? Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, the plot revolving around the suicide of a teen student in Tamil Nadu's Kalakurchi has deepened after a student jumped to her death in Kalakurchi school claiming mistreatment by her teachers. Massive protests and violence has rocked the district on 17th of July. A crime branch and CID probe into any possible foul play into the matter has been launched. CBI and CID, the teams and forensic experts used a human-sized doll to analyze the student's fall in Kalakurchi. The fall to death is now being investigated by forensic teams to see if there is any foul play behind this case. NCPCR chief will be visiting Kalakurchi on 27th of July to conduct a thorough investigation into this matter. In an exclusive India Today ground report, locals residing in Kaniyamur village, 3 kilometers away from the school premises, revealed that the protests may have been plotted. WhatsApp groups were formed and protests were planned at least a week before the 17th July protest when it first erupted. Not just that, the local residents there revealed that protesters at that scene were from different villages and unknown locals who gathered at that spot.
ஐயா, நீங்க வந்து சண்டே அன்னைக்கு என்ன நடந்துச்சு பாத்தீங்களா? எப்படி?
நாங்க ஆக்சுவலா அங்க வில்லேஜ்ல தான் இருந்தோம். ஆனா ஒரு வாரத்துக்கு முன்னாடி வாட்ஸ்அப்ல தகவல் வந்துச்சு. அது இங்க லோக்கல்ல யாரும் கலந்துக்கல. பட் அதர் பக்கத்துல இருக்க கிராமத்துல இருந்து கலந்துக்கிட்டாங்க. அதுக்கு அந்த வன்முறை பண்ணணும்னு சொல்லிட்டு நிறைய பேர் அதர் டிஸ்ட்ரிக்ட்ல இருந்து வந்திருக்காங்க. அது ஆக்சுவலா எங்களுக்கு எதுவும் தெரியாது.
இல்ல, இப்போ இந்த ஊர்ல 17ஆம் தேதி அன்னைக்கு இந்த ரூட்ல தான் வந்து அவ்வளவு பேர் வந்தாங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு நிறைய ஊர் மக்கள் பேசிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. அது பைக்ல வந்தாங்க, இல்ல வந்து இது கருப்பு சட்டை போட்டுட்டு வந்தாங்க அப்படின்னு. அந்த மாதிரி பாத்தீங்களா? எத்தனை மணிக்கு வந்த மாதிரி ஒரு தகவல், இல்ல எப்படி?
அது 9 மணி வாக்குல நிறைய பேர் போனாங்க. ஆனா அதிகமா பைபாஸ் வழியா தான் வந்தாங்க. இந்த இதுல ஒரு கிராம சைடு அதிகம் யாரும் கலந்துக்கல.
ஓகே.
ஆக்சுவலா இங்க கலந்துகிட்டவங்க வந்து ஆக்சுவலா அந்த பொண்ணுக்கு சப்போர்ட்டா தான் கலந்துகிட்டாங்க. அது வன்முறைக்காக கலந்துக்கல, ஒரு உணர்வுல போய் கலந்துட்டாங்க. ஆனா வந்து அது அங்க வன்முறை நடக்குன்னு யாருக்கும் எதிர்பார்க்கல. அந்த கும்பல் யாருன்னு தெரியல. ஆனா இங்க நம்ம காரங்க யாரும் வந்து அந்த வன்முறையில கலந்துக்கல. ஆக்சுவலா போனாங்க, கலந்துட்டாங்க, பிரச்சனை ஆகணும்னு எல்லாம் வந்துட்டாங்க. ஆக்சுவலா நமக்கு அதுல கலந்துக்கல, நானும் அதுல கலந்துக்கல.
இப்போ இந்த அதாவது 17ஆம் தேதிக்கு முன்னாடியே 2-3 வாட்டி அங்க வந்து போராட்டம் நடந்திருக்கு. ஆனா நல்ல ஒரு சைலண்டான போராட்டமா தான் நடந்திருக்கு. ஒரு 50 பேர் 100 பேருக்கு நடுவுல தான் நடந்திருக்கு. அதுக்கும் 17ஆம் தேதிக்கும் நிறைய வித்தியாசம் இருக்கு. 17ஆம் தேதி இந்த மாதிரி நடக்கும்னு யாராச்சும் எதிர்பார்த்தீங்களா? இந்த கிராமத்துல இருந்து யாராச்சும் எதிர்பார்த்தீங்களா?
கண்டிப்பா இல்ல. ஆனா அது ஆக்சுவலா வந்து அந்த வாட்ஸ்அப் குரூப் எதுக்கோசரம் அதை இது பண்ணாங்கன்னே தெரியல. அவங்க வேற நோக்கத்தோட பண்ணிருக்காங்க. ஆனா அதுல சாதாரணமா அந்த பசங்க வந்து போய் கலந்துக்கிட்டது ஒரு உணர்வுல கலந்துட்டாங்க. ஆனா அது வேற
இதாவது இந்த வாட்ஸ்அப் குரூப்னு சொல்றீங்க, ஆனா இந்த கிராமத்துல இருந்து யாரும் கலந்த மாதிரியும் அந்த தெரியல. இப்ப போலீஸ் வந்து 17ஆம் தேதிக்கு அப்புறம் போலீஸ் யாராச்சும் வந்து விசாரணை பண்ணாங்களா நம்ம ஊர்ல?
நம்ம ஊர்ல இருந்து யாரும் அதிகம் கலந்துக்கல. போனாங்க, வேடிக்கை பார்த்தாங்க, வந்துட்டாங்க. ஆக்சுவலா அந்த கலவரத்துல யாரும் கலந்துக்கல. அதனால விசா வந்து கேட்டாங்க, யாரும் அது கலந்துக்கலன்னு அவங்களுக்கு. ஏன்னா வில்லேஜ்ல எல்லாத்துக்கும் தெரியும்ல, இங்க லோக்கல் இருக்குங்க. அதனால அவங்க யாரும் இது பண்ணல.
அது பார்த்த இதுல இப்போ ஒரு அவ்வளவு பேர் பைக்ல போனது பாத்தீங்க. நம்ம ஊருக்காரங்க மாதிரி யாராச்சும் இருந்தாங்களா?
நம்ம ஊர்ல இருக்கிற யாருமே கிடையாதுங்க. எல்லாம் வெளியூர் ஆள் தான். எல்லாம் வெளியூர் ஆள் தான். வேலை அந்த மாதிரி தான் சைடு எல்லாம் போச்சு. தெற்க தான் போச்சு.
எந்த மாதிரி வண்டியில வந்தாங்க, எப்படி வந்தாங்க ஐயா?
எல்லாம் பைக்கு.
என்ன மாதிரி பைக்கு?
இதெல்லாம் என்ன நான் படிச்சா இருக்கிறேங்க.
இல்ல அதாவது பைக்கு, வேன், வண்டி ஏதாச்சும் எடுத்துட்டு வந்தாங்க? கட்டை ஏதாச்சும்?
ஆட்டோ வந்தது, பைக் வந்தது. இதுதான்.
ஓகே.
அதுக்கு ரெண்டும் அதுக்கு மேல எது?
ஏன்னா சட்டை ஏதாச்சும் கலர்ல?
எல்லாம் கருப்பு தான். எல்லாம் கருப்பு தான். பேண்ட்டுக்கு இருந்து சட்டை இருந்து எல்லாம் கருப்பு தான். எதுவும் வேற கலர் எதுவும் கிடையாது.
ஏதாச்சும் கோஷம் போட்டுட்டு வந்தாங்களா?
எல்லாம் மண்டையில கட்டு போட்டு வந்தாங்க.
ஓகே. இப்போ அந்த அன்னைக்கு வந்து ஞாயிற்றுக்கிழமை இதெல்லாம் நடந்துச்சு. இதுக்கப்புறம் போலீஸ் ஏதாச்சும் விசாரணைக்காக நம்ம ஊருக்குள்ள வந்து கேட்டாங்களா ஏதாச்சும்? அந்த மாதிரி எதுவும் கேட்கவும் இல்ல. அன்னைக்கு ஒரு நாள் மட்டும் தான் இந்த மாதிரி வந்தாங்களா? அதுக்கு முன்னாடி யாராச்சும் வந்திருந்தாங்களா?
Moving on, amid a brewing leadership tussle within the Karnataka Congress, KPCC Chief DK Shivkumar has once again hinted at becoming the Chief Minister of the state. DK Shivkumar in competing with former Chief Minister and opposition leader Siddaramaiah to become the Chief Ministerial face of the party ahead of assembly polls next year. This comes after DK Shivkumar speaking at a Vokkaliga community event sought their support for him to become the next Chief Minister of the state. DKS, who belongs to the Vokkaliga community itself, told the Vokkaliga community members there that they had a chance to see another Chief Minister from the community after SM Krishna. Siddaramaiah and DK Shivkumar have been constantly at loggerheads, even though they don't appear to say it explicitly, but it's understood that there is enough amount of ambitions. Both of them are nurturing to be the next Chief Minister, at least the candidate for the Congress party in Karnataka. Siddaramaiah supporters, meanwhile, are planning a mega event called Siddaramotsav, a birthday celebration of Siddaramaiah that celebrates his 75th birthday on August 12th. Several senior Congress leaders expected to be attending that event, which is set to propel him as the next Chief Minister's face. But of course, the party hasn't yet decided so far.
ನಿಮ್ ಕೇಳೋದಿಷ್ಟೇ, ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ. ದೇವೇಗೌಡರಿಗೂ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ, ಕುಮಾರಣ್ಣಗೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ, ನನಗೂ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ SM ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಅವರು ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಇದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಾರಿಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅದನ್ನ ಉಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಬೆಳೆಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಇದು ನಿಮ್ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು.
The party will decide who has to become the CM. I am not the man to decide. The Congress party high command will decide who has to become the Chief Minister. I want those entire community to stand behind me.
ನೋಡಪ್ಪ, ನನಗೆ ಸನ್ಯಾಸಿನಾ? ಕಾವಿ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ, ಖಾದಿ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಹಾಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ದಿ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ ವಿಲ್ ಡಿಸೈಡ್.
DK ಶಿವಕುಮಾರ್ಗೆ ಪಾಪ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಬಹಳ ವರ್ಷದ ಒಂದು ಕನಸು CM ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒದ್ದಾಡ್ತಾವ್ರೆ. ಅವರು KPCC ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರಾಗಿಯೇ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ. ಮಾಜಿ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು DK ಶಿವಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ನಾನು ಒಂದು ತೀರ ನೀನೊಂದು ತೀರ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೊದಲು ಅವರ ಪ್ಲೇಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರ ಪ್ಲೇಟಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡಿ.
SM ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಅವರಾದ ನಂತರ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ನಮ್ಗೀಗ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಮಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನರ್ಥ? ಒಕ್ಕಲಿಗರಿಗೆ ಒಪ್ಪುವ, ನಾನು ಒಕ್ಕಲಿಗರ ಲೀಡರ್ ಅಂತ. ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಜಾತಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಧರ್ಮವನ್ನ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, ಕುವೆಂಪು ಅವರ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಂತೆ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ. ಅವ್ರ ಜಾತಿಯವ್ರನ್ನೇ ಹಿಡ್ಕೋತಾರೆ, ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಸಾಬರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹೊಂಟಾರೆ. ಇಷ್ಟು ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿ ಆಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿ ಭ್ರಮೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿದ್ದುಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇಬ್ರು.
All right, Parliament saw yet another day of a stormy session, monsoon session. Opposition parties protested against GST hike, raised slogans against the government in the Parliament premises. Protesting opposition MPs also held banners, placards saying Gabbar Singh tax strikes again. Leaders of the opposition parties, including the Congress, the NCP, DMK and left, raised slogans against the government, demanding a rollback of the hike in GST rates on commodities like curd, bread and paneer. Congress leaders Rahul Gandhi, Mallikarjun Kharge, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary and others were present during the protest in front of Mahatma Gandhi statue in the Parliament premises. Amid the sloganeering and hangama, both Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha have been now adjourned to 2 p.m.
हम ऐसे इश्यूज को उठाए जो सिर्फ एक दो को नहीं या एक क्लास को नहीं, ये तो पूरे 140 करोड़ जनता पे हमला इस बीजेपी गवर्नमेंट ने किया है। जब तक जीएसटी वो वापस नहीं लेंगे हम लड़ते रहेंगे।
रुपये की कीमत जो है डॉलर के मुकाबले 80 पहुंच गया है, प्राइस राइज हो रहा है। आप लोग सब यहाँ पे प्रदर्शन कर रहे हैं, आपको इस पर क्या कहना है?
देखिए, ये सरकार को हम चेताना चाहते हैं कि आम जनता को रोजमर्रा चीजों के लिए आप खिलवाड़ मत किया करो। आम लोग आर्थिक हालात के शिकार है। आज
न्यू ब्रेकिंग। All right, here's a big breaking coming in from Sri Lanka. Ranil Wickremesinghe now the new Sri Lankan president. After much deliberation, it appears Ranil Wickremesinghe becomes the new president of Sri Lanka. He was the same man who acted as the interim president. There was a lot of mistrust owing to the fact that he was a man seen as a Gotabaya loyalist, the Rajapaksa loyalist at least. Ranil Wickremesinghe, after much deliberation, has now been elected as the new Sri Lankan president. Huge development coming in from Sri Lanka after the economic meltdown, never seen before crisis in Sri Lanka. The president, the prime minister had to resign. In fact, literally fled. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president, had to flee the country after pressure from its citizens for him to be punished for bringing down Sri Lanka to its knees. Post his exit, Ranil Wickremesinghe was first acting as the interim prime minister, then acted as the interim president. Now, the latest coming in, Ranil Wickremesinghe is the new Sri Lankan president. He's been formally appointed after much deliberation. Today is a day when a decision had to be made. President polls just took place, and here we see Ranil Wickremesinghe has become the new president of Sri Lanka. Huge development here. Sri Lankan crisis. In fact, one must note, Ranil Wickremesinghe has huge responsibility on his shoulders. We're looking at Sri Lanka, looking at a crisis never seen before. At a time like this, Ranil Wickremesinghe now takes over as the new president of the country. Here, Sri Lanka's interim president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, was facing off against Dulles Alahaperunma, a 63-year-old staunch Sinhala Buddhist nationalist leader, and also key member from the breakaway group of the ruling SLPP party. And after much of that deliberation, it appears Ranil Wickremesinghe has won as the president of Sri Lanka. He wins with 134 votes. Huge development coming in from Sri Lanka. In fact, at this point, Ranil Wickremesinghe already acted as the interim prime minister as well as the interim president. Here we're looking at Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is a Sri Lankan. He was looked at as the Rajapaksa's loyalist. He was a man who acted as the interim president as well. But there was a lot of mistrust owing to the fact that he was quite close to the Rajapaksas. But nonetheless, he's managed to win with 134 votes at this point. He was facing off with Dulles Alahaperunma, a 63-year-old Sinhala Buddhist nationalist leader, but managed to win with 134 votes above. Gaurav Sawant joining us from Colombo. Gaurav Sawant, huge responsibility for Ranil Wickremesinghe at this point. He's got to literally pull Sri Lanka back to normalcy. A huge responsibility. But at this point, do tell us, what's the people's perception? Have they received this piece of news well?
Well, it's just come in a couple of minutes ago. News just breaking here on India Today. Ranil Wickremesinghe has polled 134 votes as against Dallas Alha Peruma, who's got 82, and Anura Kumara Disanaike has got just 3 in all. So Ranil Wickremesinghe has been elected as the 8th executive president of Sri Lanka. It's just happened right now in Parliament. It started right on time at 10 in the morning. Some votes, of course, are invalid, but some would argue that Ranil Wickremesinghe has actually fulfilled his lifelong ambition. He'd reached up to being, acting president of the country, but now till November 2024, he remains president of Sri Lanka, something that he really aspired to be. But his biggest challenge actually starts now. It's a multi-pronged challenge. One is to convince the streets of Sri Lanka that he will be able to deliver. Because remember, the street was actually saying that you're just an extension of the Rajpakshas and they wanted a clean change. As far as members of parliament that India Today spoke to some of them, and they said as far as the constitution of the country is concerned, they will have to move within the constitutional framework till next elections are held in November 2024. So Ranil Wickremesinghe's biggest challenge is now to get food, fuel, and other essentials that this country needs, and then get the economy back on track. Easier said than done. He is seeking a number of deferred, loan deferment and also an IMF bailout. Of course, just a couple of days back, he did say that the talks with the IMF are in advanced stages to get a bailout for Sri Lanka. If he's able to deliver that, if he's able to get assistance that the country is desperately seeking from India, then he does get a breather. Or, as the street has warned, the Janta Adagalia, the protesters, as they have warned, that they would be forced to take the streets once again. Whether that happens or not, we'll know in the next couple of hours, if not days.
Yet again, we're looking at the people of Sri Lanka who are really concerned if at all a leader will be able to pick the country out of crisis. Ranil Wickremesinghe, largely was viewed as a loyalist of the Rajapaksas. They weren't very happy when he even took over as the interim prime minister or the interim president. But today he's won with 134 votes. Largely, will this go well with the people of Sri Lanka who are really desperate to see some normalcy in the nation, Gaurav?
That's $1 million question. You're absolutely right. The people, at least the protesters that we spoke to, they said that they wanted a clean break. They wanted a change. They wanted someone new. Yesterday, Sajid Premadasa, the leader of opposition who had stood aside in favor of Dallas Alha Peruma, he had also said that they had hoped that India will continue to assist whoever comes to power in Sri Lanka, whether it's Ranil Wickremesinghe or anyone else. So India's assistance remains extremely critical as far as Sri Lanka is concerned at this point of time, as does an IMF bailout that this country requires. There are a series of problems, and if you recall, a couple of days back, Ranil Wickremesinghe, he not only tried to distance himself from the policies of Gotabaya Rajpaksha, but he also tried to distance himself from the family, indicating that there are certain steps and measures that he wants to take now, which hadn't been taken earlier. And some of these steps also include getting some assistance from India in terms of food, fuel, fertilizer, medicines, which is already on its way. And India has said that India will continue to assist the people of Sri Lanka. Also secure an IMF bailout. And Ranil Wickremesinghe said that talks with IMF are in an advanced stage. So should that IMF bailout come Sri Lanka's way, it would also lead to certain things that could trigger the street once again in terms of removing of subsidies, bringing up prices of food, fuel, electricity, and a lot of other things, reducing the size of the government here. Almost every second, third citizen is either in the army, the police, the government, or some other form of all of that will have to come down in the months and years ahead, and that would be a huge challenge, an uphill task for any government, given how angry people on the streets are at this point of time, Nabila.
You know, if you could tell us, Gaurav, a quick word on what would be the first primary task for Ranil Wickremesinghe. We know that the country has been declared a state of emergency. It's now in a state of emergency. What do you think will be Ranil's first step to bring the country back to normalcy?
You know, this India Today special broadcast comes to you from outside the Sri Lankan Parliament, and this is where the next course of action technically is also being contemplated. Ranil Wickremesinghe, as the executive president of Sri Lanka, will have the task of securing an IMF bailout, bringing in money for this government to function, for this country to be able to function, bring in fuel from India, bringing in food from India, bringing in medicines from India, and that is just the first step. A major part of this country depends on tourism, so reviving tourism is one of his biggest challenges. Agriculture or agricultural produce. Now, one of the Tughlaki steps, if I may, taken by Gotabaya Rajpaksha was going 100% organic without weighing pros and cons and results. So getting fertilizers from India again is a challenge and a big task. Some of it has already happened. Ranil Wickremesinghe just a couple of days back again had said that we've managed to get fertilizers. They are being distributed to farmers, loans of farmers with landholdings of less than 2 acres. Those loans have also been cancelled. So reviving his country, getting his country back on its feet. It's a bankrupt country. It's a country in deep trouble. Reviving it is his biggest challenge. Whether he's able to do it with angry protesters on the street, how will he contain those protesters right now?
මගේ මිත්‍ර අනුර කුමාර දිසානායකටත් එතුමාගෙනුත් ඒ වගේම ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා. එතුමාත් දන්නවා අද රටේ තියෙන ගැඹුරු තත්ත්වය. මම කැමති විපක්ෂ නායක මගේ මිත්‍ර සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහතුමාටත් ඒ සියලු දෙනාගෙන් මේ ඉල්ලීම කරන්න. අද අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙලා අපි අලුත් ක්‍රමවේදයක් බලමු. ඒ ගැන තමයි අපි සාකච්ඡා කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම ද්‍රවිඩ සන්ධානයේ සම්බන්ධන් මන්තුමා ඇතුළු සියලු දෙනාගෙන්මත් ඒ ඉල්ලීම මම කරනවා. අපේ පොන්නම්බලම් මන්ත්‍රීතුමත් විග්නේශ්වරන් මන්තුමාගෙනුත් ඒ ඉල්ලීම් කරන්නට තියෙන අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙන්න කියලා. ඒ වගේම මට තිබෙනවා විශේෂයෙන්ම ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ නායක හිටපු ජනාධිපති මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මහතුමාගෙනුත් ඒ පක්ෂය වෙනුවෙන් ඒ ඉල්ලීම කරනවා.
They're speaking at the House. He's just won as the president of Sri Lanka by 134 votes. We're going to try and get that translation for you as he speaks in the House. Ranil Wickremesinghe, now the new Sri Lankan president. A huge development coming in from Sri Lanka. Gaurav Sawant there bringing us that news. He's right there in Colombo. Gaurav, you were saying Ranil Wickremesinghe right now speaking in the parliament. He's got 134 votes, manages to retain. He was in fact the interim prime minister, interim president, despite the animosity among the population or the citizens of Sri Lanka. He's managed to win the votes, the highest votes, and now return as the president of Sri Lanka. He is now the president for the country that's currently under crisis. Please take us through what would be his first responsibility.
Absolutely, Nabila. With 134 votes, he's clearly been elected by majority members of parliament as the next president of Sri Lanka. His tenure remains till November 2024. He will fulfill, the tenure of Gotabaya Rajpaksha till November 2024, and till then, his challenge is huge to bring his country back on its feet, to revive the economy of his country, a bankrupt country. Where will he get resources from? In case he secures an IMF bailout that he says they are in advanced stage of talks for, what is it that they will have to do in turn? Remove subsidies in this country, and that will be easier said than done, given the fact that people are so used to, living on subsidies, paying much less for electricity, for petrol. Education is free, medical facilities are absolutely free as far as every Sri Lankan citizen is concerned. But somebody will have to foot the bill for it. And now when they start footing the bill, the challenges are only set to intensify for Ranil Wickremesinghe. Will he be up to the task? Remains to be seen.
Clearly considering that he was the interim president and prime minister, may have somehow warmed him up to the seat. At this point, we believe he was the first to announce a state of emergency for the country. We see that the military has taken over. They're trying to bring situation under control. And largely in the last few days, we see some kind of peace on the streets. Is that because Gotabaya has resigned and we see some kind of hope? Or is it that protesters have now given up? They have no other choice but to get to their duties.
So the protesters will also re-strategize from this point on, and we've been interacting with leaders of the Janata Adagalai or the people's struggle or the people's protest at the Gota Go Home Center, which is the heart of touristy Colombo. There were initially thousands of protesters, now reduced to a trickle, and they were also watching these developments very closely. They also realize that a solution needs to be found, as most analysts have argued, within the framework of the constitution. If people in Sri Lanka have to have tourism back in their country, if they need to have fuel in their country, if they need order in that country, and for all of that, if street protests or in images that the whole world saw of the Prime Minister's house being set on fire, or people in the presidential palace, that would mean tourists will not be coming here, and their main task is to bring tourists back. Their main task is actually to ensure that the economy is revived. So does Ranil Wickremesinghe have a roadmap to revive Sri Lanka? It's a bankrupt country. It's in deep trouble. It's defaulted on loans. It's seeking deferment of payment. It's seeking fertilizer, food, fuel from India. It's seeking an IMF bailout. So there are a lot of things that Sri Lanka is seeking. But how will it repay? How will it be able to provide for its people? Does Ranil Wickremesinghe have a roadmap for that? Now we will see MPs coming out. We are told that some leaders would also be coming out of Parliament now. So we will hear from them. But it does remain a fact that the majority of MPs in the 225-member assembly, 134 of 225, voted in favour of Ranil Wickremesinghe.
You know, at this point, Gaurav, the country is in a very difficult situation. They're trying to cope with basic necessities. And does Ranil Wickremesinghe have a plan in mind? Considering he was already interim president, he may have had already, he may have been pushing for himself to be the president. He has, of course, influenced a number of people to finally vote for him. Now that he's come to power, do you believe that he has a plan in mind? Any reserves to really fulfill the needs, desperate needs of those people at this point?
You know, Ranil Wickremesinghe has been Prime Minister of this country 6 times in the past. But Ranil Wickremesinghe, when he took over as interim Prime Minister of this country, when Mahinda Rajapakse was axed, Gotabaya Rajapakse tried to, Ranil Wickremesinghe tried to say that he did not have the authority to take the kind of decisions that he wanted to take. At least that is the indication that we hear. Those are the words that we hear. Some of the decisions that had been taken by Gotabaya Rajapakse, like organic farming or reducing taxes, all of that may have been, good in terms of either making headlines or populist measures. But down the line, we are told that there was no one powerful enough to oppose him. Yeah. Now we are told that decisions that Ranil Wickremesinghe intends to take would be in consultation, where a lot of assistance is also being sought from India in terms of food, fuel, medicines, resources, and all of that becomes extremely interesting on how Sri Lanka intends to move forward. The people and government of Sri Lanka, how they intend to move forward in terms of those resources coming to this country, and on what terms will that IMF bailout be secured. Ranil Wickremesinghe says they're in advanced stages of talks, but what does that actually mean? How does that translate into action on ground is interesting to watch.
Absolutely. And in fact, we have Sagala Ratnayake, who is the former chief of staff of Ranil Wickremesinghe. He joins us live. Let me quickly cut across to our guest here. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us, making time. Sangala, at this point, we see the country, which is in absolute crisis, is seeing some kind of hope in Ranil Wickremesinghe. What, in your mind, do you feel Wickremesinghe would do first to lift this country out of its desperate plight?
There are two priorities. One is to ensure that we get consensus from all parties and form an all-party government that would work for the revival of the economy. And the second step would be to revive the economy, starting with finalizing the IMF talks and getting the framework in place. So those would be his two top priorities. As far as law and order goes, I think, as you would see, law and order has been restored in the country over the last 4 to 5 days. As the acting president, embarked on that as his first measure then. So it is of utmost importance that we do maintain law and order. And I think the people have tremendous hope in Ranil Wickremesinghe, and there is tremendous responsibility on the shoulders of President Ranil Wickremesinghe to deliver to his people.
Right, Mr. Sangala, I'm going to quickly cut across to Gaurav Sawant, who has been relentlessly reporting from the streets. Go on, Gaurav.
Mr. Ratnaike, does Ranil Wickremesinghe have a roadmap? How will Sri Lanka's economy be revived? Point 1, point 2, the angry street. How will he convince the street that he's different from Gotabaya Rajapaksa's dispensation?
Are you asking me this?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Ratnaike, my question was to you. I can hear you loud and clear. How will Ranil Wickremesinghe be able to convince the people of Sri Lanka he's different from the Gotabaya Rajapaksa dispensation?
This is not the first time Ranil Wickremesinghe has been in the driving seat. He has, as Prime Minister, on 3 occasions before, he has revived the economy in Sri Lanka. 2001, he took over when we were having a negative economy. Then 2015, he took over as Prime Minister when again the economy was weak. And then 1.5 months ago, when he came in under President Gotabaya to replacing Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, again he was left with this tough task of a economy that was in shambles. On all 3 occasions, he delivered. On the 3rd occasion, it has only been 6 weeks. The country that he became the Prime Minister then didn't have fuel, didn't have cooking gas, didn't have medicines in the hospitals or in the pharmacies, didn't have fertilizer for the farmers, and food stocks were short. But in the 6 weeks, he managed to ensure that the people of Sri Lanka had medicine. Fertilizer was delivered with the assistance of the Indian government, and the current season was supported by that fertilizer. Future stocks were also, for the next season, was also placed in order with assistance from multilateral agencies. When it comes to food, the Indian credit line supported us to bridge some of the shortfalls. Cooking gas, where there were lines, relentless lines, queues of people waiting for cooking gas for weeks, now the problem has been resolved with a continuous supply of cooking gas coming. Of course, there are still lines with fuel, for fuel, but
the anger on
again,
the street,
the supplies,
anger on the street remains, sir.
The
anger on the
yes,
street remains. People see him as an extension of Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
There are still lines because the West. See, it's only been 6 weeks, and he cannot deliver miracles, and some of the street violence also delayed some of the delivery. So it is important that the president speaks to the people, his team speaks to the people, and that we lay out the program that we have for them. But there is confidence coming in the people that he has made some deliveries and that he given a little more time, will deliver. It is going to take a while for Sri Lanka to come out of this economic crisis. It's not going to happen overnight. We will have to go into the IMF
Mr. Ratnaike,
process.
one thing that was held against Ranil Wickremesinghe one thing that
Yes.
was held against him was the fact that when he had the opportunity, when he had the power, he did not hold the Rajpaksas accountable. Now, will his tenure as executive president of the country till November 2024 be any different?
Look, when the people said that he was not holding the Rajapaksas responsible, you got to look at it. The country has a system. It's not the president who can pass judgment on the crimes or offences. There is a judicial system. There is the police who do the investigations and produce the cases to the courts. So this process has to take place. And where there are bottlenecks in the laws, that's when the president and the legislature need to step in to ensure those bottlenecks are streamlined. So I think those processes will take place. Right now, the crisis in Sri Lanka is that of an economic crisis that has come about from mismanagement and delayed responses to situations. Now, this is what we need to set right, and that is what we are going to work on with President Wickremesinghe's team is going to be working on. And this team will not be just a single party or two parties. He's going to, in his first speech to Parliament as the president, minutes after his presidency was announced in Parliament by the Speaker, by the General Secretary and the Speaker, the president spoke and he reached out to all party leaders and said, let's all get together for the sake of this country, for the sake of the people. And that's the requirement, that's the call of the moment. And I do hope that the party leaders will live up to this.
So does that mean there will be an all-party government in Sri Lanka? Point one and point two, how do you secure an IMF loan? We were told, Ranil Wickremesinghe said that you're in advanced stages of talks. Sri Lanka is in advanced stage of talks for an IMF loan, a bailout. Okay, give me a moment as we try and reestablish that line with the Chief of Staff of Sri Lanka's new President, Ranil Wickremesinghe. Big challenge at this point of time is to get the economy back on track. It's to revive Sri Lanka once again. And the economy is in a shambles. The currency is in tailspin. People are leaving the country not in hundreds but in many thousands. Now, of course, members of parliament are coming out of parliament and we will attempt to speak to them about their vote. 134 votes out of 225 in favor of Ranil Wickremesinghe. He is the next president of Sri Lanka, no longer acting president but now executive president of Sri Lanka. His challenges remain immense. Reviving the economy, one part of it.
See visuals, live visuals coming in right from outside the presidential palace. We see people there right after we saw much mayhem just a few weeks ago. Today we see a mood of celebration. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who's now taken over as the president of Sri Lanka. We see much joy and celebration at this point. Of course, not a huge crowd like we saw of those protesters. We saw massive numbers who came down to protest, who stormed in to try and take over the presidential palace, and literally many of them infiltrated into the government office there and took siege at that point. Now today we see a different mood, a different picture altogether, where protesters have landed up outside the presidential palace, are celebrating, it appears, and seem quite happy with the development. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is now elected with 134 votes as the president of Sri Lanka. He's already been the prime minister 6 times over. Gaurav Sawant, who's right there at the spot tracking those developments. Gaurav, do you want to explain to us these people who are right now outside the president's palace, who are celebrating, you know, they're raising slogans and seems like a mood of cheer and joy for them. What exactly is their sentiment there? We know this is not a large crowd, but a small crowd it appears, and they seem to be supporters of someone.
So there are two sets of protesters. One who are chanting "Go Ranil Go," and they are a part of the Janata Aragalai, which is the people's protest or the people's struggle here in Sri Lanka. These are the people who want Ranil Wickremesinghe not to be the president of the country, because they see him as part of the problem and not part of the solution. In fact, when we were speaking to some of the Janata Aragalai leaders yesterday, they were saying in case Ranil Wickremesinghe is elected president, then they would intensify their stir. They would intensify their protests. Of course, they would have to recalibrate their protests, because these are not just inter-university students, federation members and leaders, but also members and leaders of various trade unions in Sri Lanka who've come together to oppose the Gotabaya Rajapaksa dispensation and those who are linked to it. Now, Ranil Wickremesinghe has desperately tried to distance himself from the Gotabaya Rajapaksa dispensation, but the people do not see it as that. People see him as part of the problem and not a part of the solution. But now he is the president of Sri Lanka, so it remains to be seen whether these protests remain control, whether if security forces are able to control it. They've imposed emergency. There are restrictions on protests. They may protest in a designated spot and not beyond. Or does it spread like wildfire like it did last time?
All right, so Gaurav Sawant there explaining to us on the two camps. One camp who are worried that Ranil Wickremesinghe may not be able to pull up a solution, considering that he was a man known close to the Rajapaksas and have opposed to him being the president. But nonetheless, you also have another sect of people within the country who are supporting Ranil Wickremesinghe, and that's the visual that we see here, where supporters of Ranil Wickremesinghe have arrived right outside the presidential palace, are cheering for him, raising slogans, and of course a picture of joy and celebration that we see outside the presidential palace. A stark difference from what we saw just a few weeks ago, where protesters stormed into the presidential palace, literally took siege of that government building in protest against the Rajapaksas continuing in power. In fact, the country we saw has seen an unprecedented economic meltdown, which led to almost a civil war-like situation where citizens stormed onto the streets, taking over many state offices, and that despite the military presence and the military trying hard to calm the situation. Today we're seeing a different scene, a different picture, scenes of some kind of hope that we see outside Presidential Palace. Supporters of Ranil Wickremesinghe who've now gathered, who are now praising the development. Ranil Wickremesinghe has won 134 of the total 219 votes, and it seems like his supporters are right now erupting in joy right outside the President's Palace. And that's the visual, live visual that we bring to you right here. Gaurav Sawant, who's been tracking those developments from Colombo for the last few days, bringing us the most accurate updates. Gaurav, while you see that some of them are still angry with the fact that Ranil Wickremesinghe has been elected as the president, they, like you said, look at him as more of a problem, less of a solution. Do you think that that will be dealt with now Ranil Wickremesinghe solidifying his position? He is no more the interim president, he is now the acting president of Sri Lanka. Do you think he will give out orders, strict orders, to contain any kind of commotion or protests henceforth?
So those orders are already in place, Nabila, ever since emergency was promulgated, and we reported on it 2 days ago. As soon as the announcement was made about elections to be held today, immediately orders were given that there would be no protests anywhere around the parliament. This area was completely barricaded. In fact, we've just sent a report a short while back where you will see Sri Lanka Navy personnel, patrolling the waters all around in their speedboats and their water scooters and their jet skis. So you have Sri Lanka Navy, you have Sri Lankan Army, you have Sri Lankan paramilitary forces, SWAT teams, commandos, and the Sri Lankan police, and in these multi-tiered barricades. I mean, if you just count the number of barricades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 layers of barricades here, a couple of layers of barricade beyond. So that's the kind of barricading that has been done here to ensure that there is no breach. Of course, the protesters had also said that they will let the parliamentary process continue unhindered. It's only when the results come will they recalibrate their strategy. And their strategy initially was to take to the streets once again in case Ranil Wickremesinghe was elected. But late last night, despite, yesterday Sajid Premadasa, leader of opposition, announced he didn't have the numbers. So he said he's stepping down in favor of Dallas Alu Peruma. And yet, despite opposition coming in support, he could not garner the numbers. He did not have, he could muster only 84 as against 134 that Ranil Wickremesinghe has almost across most party lines, which means people, at least the MPs, have hope that he will be able to, perhaps with a national government, should a national government be formed, if a national government is formed, be able to find a solution to the current crisis where perhaps the entire nation needs to be on the same page to come out of the situation, Nabila.
All right, Gaurav, thank you very much. But do stay with us. We have some more international news coming in on the other side. All right, here's some big news coming in. It is China's global bid to hide its shocking and brutal anti-Muslim offensive in its Xinjiang province. China is asking the United Nations Human Rights Chief to bury a highly anticipated report on human rights violations in Xinjiang. According to the Chinese letter sent by that was seen by Reuters, here we're looking at China trying to suppress a report that speaks of large-scale atrocities against Muslims in China. China is trying to stall the letter, which can cause acute embarrassment on the global stage by exposing how it suppresses its Uyghur minorities, who are often force-fed pork, put in concentration camps to reorient them from their traditional beliefs. China, right now in an embarrassing spot, it's trying hard to really suppress a report that really would expose China on the many atrocities carried out against Muslims in China. It is China's global bid now to hide its shocking brutalities against Muslims. The anti-Muslim offensive in the Xinjiang province, China asking the United Nations Human Rights Chief to bury a highly anticipated report on human rights violations in Xinjiang, according to Chinese letter that's now highlighted by Reuters. China is trying to stall the letter, which can cause acute embarrassment on the global stage. Gaurav Sawant for more on that. Gaurav, China for long known to have been anti-Muslim. We're seeing China now trying to suppress a report that could possibly expose how it extensively suppresses its Uyghur minorities, who are often force-fed pork, put in concentration camps only to reorient them from their traditional belief. If this report does come out, it will bring them embarrassment on a global stage, and that's what China does not want.
You know, China is trying to browbeat countries at the United Nations so that the truth about what's happening in the Xinjiang province with the Uyghur people does not come out in public domain. And this report, this is the first time that the United Nations Human Rights Council was given access to Xinjiang, had intensive interaction with the judiciary in China, with Wang Yi, their state councillor and foreign minister, and also a video conference with Xi Jinping, the Chinese president. Now, the report is anyways being criticized for being a watered-down version of ground realities in China, and yet China does not want this picture to come out because it apparently this report has details of what happens in what is described by China as its reorientation camps or concentration camps, or how women are ill-treated, the Uyghur women are ill-treated by Han Chinese men, how their husbands of these Uyghur women, they are locked up in concentration camps their religious books, the Holy Quran, that is not given the respect that the Holy Quran should get in these Chinese concentration camps, how mosques are defaced and removed, and toilets have been built in China, in the Xinjiang province, where mosques once stood. So all of these facts, some of these are likely to be highlighted, at least that is what is being said, and China does not want these facts to come out in public domain, and that is why it's not only trying to browbeat some countries, but also trying to browbeat the United Nations so that this report is not made public.
This is highly shocking, and it's not something that that comes as a surprise, because this has been known for quite a while, and China, time and again, any kind of journalists or a media organization trying to probe into it have always been, pulled up or sidelined or their voice muscled. At this point, this report would really speak of a lot, because we believe that this is not just the Uyghur minority Muslims, but any Muslim minority group in China are literally found and pushed into concentration camps. This is the kind of atrocities that they've meted out for decades now, which China does not want to come out. With the pressure now it's putting on the UN, how do you think nations would receive this?
So, a wire agency has accessed that letter. Independent diplomats have confirmed that China has written such a letter to various governments asking them to sign. I mean, look at how China tries to browbeat countries. China wants a signature from countries that such a report should not be made public. Otherwise, it would damage an organization like the United Nations and the Human Rights Council. And this is at a time when the Director General of the organization has visited I think it was sometimes in May that a visit to Xinjiang was carried out, extensive or at some level interaction was carried out with those in these so-called reorientation camps, where they visited also some other places in Xinjiang, interacted with people on ground, interacted with officials on ground, with the police, with judiciary. But this report apparently also talks about lack of oversight, lack of judicial oversight, lack of human rights for the people of Xinjiang, and China doesn't want all this information, Nabila, to come out in public domain.
Gaurav, absolutely tragic. If this is the case, they must be pulled up. At this point, China desperately trying to suppress that report that really exposes the anti-Muslim rhetoric and almost a near genocide situation for the minority Muslims there in China. That's the report that suggests the kind of atrocities which is now trying to be suppressed. All right, shifting focus on the other side of a short break. Kerala NEET innerwear controversy snowballs. National Testing Agency forms fact-finding panel. More details up next.
Everyone's busy finding what's trending. You're busy finding out why. India Today, for those who research before reacting. Download the India Today app now.
You are watching India
Now, the NEET exam controversy in Kerala's Kollam district continues to send shockwaves. BJP student wing, ABVP, has now led a massive stir in Kollam. NTA has constituted a fact-finding panel, meanwhile, to look into the issue so far. 5 people have been arrested by the Kerala police in the matter. The National Testing Agency, the NTA, has distanced itself from the Kollam controversy, stating that its dress code strictly does not permit any such removal of innerwear. Remember, 90 girl students were asked to remove their innerwears before taking the examination. Students' parents filed a formal complaint alleging 90 female students were asked to remove their innerwear and keep it in a safe room, a storeroom, until they completed their examinations. Unfortunately, they weren't even allowed to wear their innerwear while leaving the class. They were asked to carry it with them.
കുറെ കുട്ടികളെ മാറ്റി നിർത്തി അവരുടെ ദേഹത്ത് മെക്കലുണ്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് അപ്പോഴേ നമ്മൾ അങ്ങോട്ട് ചിന്തിച്ചു മോൾ എന്തിനാ കരയുന്നതെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു. അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞു ആൻറ്റി ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ഈ വസ്ത്രം ഒന്ന് മാറാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഒരു സാധനം. അപ്പം ഞങ്ങൾ വിശ്രമിക്കുന്ന റൂം തുറന്നു കൊടുത്ത് ഞങ്ങൾ ആ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ അവിടെ ആക്കല്ല. ഞങ്ങൾ ഒരു തെറ്റും ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല. ഞങ്ങൾക്കും ഇതുപോലെ 20 വയസ്സ് പ്രായമുള്ള മക്കളുമാരുള്ള അമ്മമാരെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഈ ഒരു ഉപകാരമേ ചെയ്തു കൊടുത്തോളൂ.
Let me quickly cut across to Shivi Mol KG, joining us live from Thiruvananthapuram. Shivi Mol, we are looking at testimonies mounting. Not one to several girls now coming forward and putting forth their complaints, saying that this was the most horrific experience that they've ever had. Many of them also claiming that their NEET examinations went horribly wrong. They couldn't concentrate, they couldn't focus. They really missed out at this point.
Yes, the version that we heard was from the 2 arrested from the college side, the 2 workers here. They're saying that they had no idea what was going on here. They was just helping the girls to keep their innerwears in a room. Now, there's another version that has come up in the case right now, which is of the agency side. The 3 arrested from the agency side. Just a while back, I spoke to one of the parent of one person who was arrested from the agency side by police yesterday late night. So the parent was telling us that his daughter is just 19 years old and she was arrested yesterday as part of the agency. So now her father was telling that she was not given any training by the agency on how to check these students or anything. They was just told keep the biometric and just see if there's any sound. Please keep the students aside. That's what the only thing that was directed to them is what the parent is saying, and they were not given any training. They just received a message that we need few. In fact, the father was the person who arranged almost eight people as part of the agency to conduct the exam, and her father was telling that she had no idea it was actually done by the college people, is what their version is. They were just asked to keep the students aside. If any sound was heard, keep the student aside, and then 2 people from the college side will come and take them to another room. Now, that's the version they are putting forward. And he also accused the college of framing innocent people who had no idea what was going on. He's saying that there are many people involved. There's actual people involved in the issue, or actual people who were part of this has not been identified. They're trying to protect them, is what the father is accusing. Father of one of the arrested is accusing. Now, we've heard 2 versions of both the sides, the agency and the college side. The police, however, arrested these 5 people based on the CCTV visuals and based on the statements recorded by the student who filed the complaint. So we will be looking forward to a clarity from the police side on what is exactly happened, like on what exact reason was these people arrested, because both the sides are putting forward 2 versions. Also, in the morning, BJP protested outside. They were actually speaking for the 2 workers from the college. And a while back, we also saw ABVP, the student wing of BJP, protesting outside the collectorate in Kollam. A lot of students gathered outside there. Police had to use water cannons and all of that on them. So the protests are going on, different versions coming up. The police is yet to give a clarification what exactly has happened.
Thank you very much, Shivi Mol, for joining us. Of course, finally, 5 people have been arrested and investigation into this matter underway. Meanwhile, the plot revolving around the suicide of a teen student in Tamil Nadu's Kalakuruchi deepens. After a student jumped to her death in Kalakuruchi school, claiming mistreatment by her teachers, massive protests and violence rocked that district on the 17th of July. A crime branch and CID probe into any possible foul play into this. All right, cutting across to some big breaking news coming in. Encounter between Sidhu Musewala, accused, and the cops. Gangsters linked to Musewala's murder currently hiding. Dramatic encounter between gangsters as well as the police. In the wake of Sidhu Musewala's murder, the police on overdrive trying to hunt down those gangsters who are linked to Sidhu Musewala's death. The murder of Sidhu Musewala has now led to cops trying to chase those gangsters who are behind his murder. We believe now encounter has broken out between Musewala accused and the cops. Gangsters linked to Musewala's murder currently in hiding. Dramatic encounter between the cops and the gangsters. We're going to try and get more information on this, but from what we know right now, even as we speak, an encounter that's broken out between Musewala's accused, the murderers, and the cops. Let me cut across to Arvind Oja for more on that. Arvind, kya ho raha hai ab? Encounter between cops and the gangsters. The hunt is on. We believe that Musewala's murderers or people who linked to his murder who are currently hiding. Take us through the dramatic scenes.
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए ये इनकाउंटर चल रहा है जो गैंगस्टर है उनके बीच और पंजाब पुलिस के बीच। अमृतसर का जो अटारी विलेज है, आपको बताऊं कि भारत
All right, I'm going to try and patch Arvind Oja on that, but here we're looking at an encounter that's broken out between Sidhu Musewala's murderers and the cops. The gangsters who are linked to Sidhu Musewala's murder have now faced off with the police who are trying to catch them. The hunt is on. We're looking at the visuals coming in from the Atari border, where the gangsters linked to Sidhu Musewala's murder currently in hiding. They're trying to escape with the police there vehemently chasing them. At this point, visuals coming in from the Atari border. Arvind Oja for more on that. Arvind, please बताइए. The visuals coming in from the Atari border, where we see the cops there chasing gangsters who are linked to Sidhu Musewala's murder. We're going to try and get more information on who those suspects are, but two suspects who could be the shooters of Sidhu Musewala. They're right now on the run. The cops there trying to chase those men. In fact, the gangsters firing back at the police. So we're seeing an encounter-like situation that's currently underway. The Atari border, visuals coming in of the police chasing those gangsters. They're trying to get hold of those men who shot Sidhu Musewala. Those shooters, a few of them yet to be arrested. The cops there on the hunt for the murderers of Sidhu Musewala. And we see that the police who are chasing those gangsters have been met with gunshots. In fact, those gangsters also carrying weapons. They are firing back at the police who are chasing them. Arvind Oja, who's tracking those developments. Arvind, आप कहाँ हो? अतारी बॉर्डर में एनकाउंटर जैसा सीन हो रहा है. ये विजुअल जो आ रहा है उसके बारे में बताइए.
देखिए, ये पंजाब पुलिस को इनपुट्स मिला था कि जो दो गैंगस्टर वो सिद्धू मूसेवाला के हत्या में शामिल हो सकते हैं, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस पहुंची है और ये इनकाउंटर शुरू हो गया है क्योंकि गैंगस्टर जो है उन्होंने गोली चलानी शुरू कर दी। अभी जो इनिशियल जानकारी मिली है उसके मुताबिक जो गोली चला रहे हैं उसमें जगरूप सिंह रूपा और मन्नू, ये दो ऐसे गैंगस्टर हैं जिनका नाम सिद्धू मूसेवाले के मर्डर में आया था सामने, वो छुपे हो सकते हैं। जैसे ही पुलिस टीम पहुंची, दूसरी तरफ से फायरिंग शुरू हो गई। आपको बताऊं, ये जो इलाका जहां पर इनकाउंटर हो रहा है ये भारत पाकिस्तान का बॉर्डर का एरिया है, पंजाब की तरफ का अमृतसर का अटारी, जहां पर फिलहाल ये इनकाउंटर जारी है। अभी तक दोनों तरफ से गोलीबारी हुई है। अभी कोई गैंगस्टर के पकड़े जाने की खबर नहीं है, लेकिन ये इनकाउंटर शुरू हुआ है क्योंकि पंजाब पुलिस को टीम को ये जानकारी मिली थी क्योंकि सिद्धू मूसेवाले के कई शूटर दिल्ली पुलिस स्पेशल सेल ने पकड़ लिए थे, लेकिन कुछ फरार थे, जिसमें जगरूप सिंह रूपा और एक मन्नू, दो का नाम सामने आ रहा था। इस इनपुट पर पंजाब पुलिस टीम पहुंची है अटारी इलाके में, जहां पर ये इनकाउंटर शुरू हो गया। आप देख पा रहे हैं दोनों तरफ से गोलीबारी हुई है। ऐसा सोर्सेज बता रहे हैं।
ये लोग जो भाग रहे हैं पुलिस से, ये लोग हैं कौन? ये जो 2 शूटर सस्पेक्ट कर रहे हैं, मगर वही लोग हैं?
देखिए मैं आपको बताऊं, जो इनकाउंटर हुआ है उसके बाद चूंकि रिहायशी इलाका है तो इलाके के लोगों में भी भगदड़ मच गई है कि पंजाब पुलिस इस पूरी तैयारी के साथ गई थी, लेकिन अचानक से जो गैंगस्टर है उन्होंने गोलियां चलानी शुरू कर दी। देखिए आपको ये समझना होगा कि खास तौर पर जो सिद्धू मूसेवाला के केस में जो मर्डर थे उनके पास सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स थे जो जर्मनी और दूसरे टर्की इस तरह के कंट्रीज से आए थे, तो इनके पास सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है। इस तरह से इन्होंने फायरिंग शुरू कर दी, इसलिए लोग आसपास के लोग जान बचाने के लिए भी भाग रहे हैं। लेकिन ये जरूर जानकारी मिली है कि 2 गैंगस्टर जिसमें जगरूप सिंह रूपा और मन्नू, ये 2 यहाँ पर छुपे हुए हैं, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की टीम पहुंची और इनकाउंटर शुरू हो गया है। अभी ये इनिशियल स्टेज है, ये कह पाना कि कोई गैंगस्टर घायल हुआ या नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन दोनों तरफ से फायरिंग हुई है। पहले गैंगस्टर ने गोली चलाई है, उसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की तरफ से गोली चली है। ये जो आपको बताऊं, जहाँ ये इनकाउंटर हुआ है ये रेजिडेंशियल इलाका है, लोग यहाँ पर रहते हैं। ये भारत पाकिस्तान का जो बॉर्डर है अमृतसर का अटारी, वहां पर ये इनकाउंटर हुआ है। एक विलेज है जहां पर इनके छुपे होने की जानकारी मिली थी, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की टीम यहाँ पर पहुंची है।
वो जो गैंगस्टर्स है जो भाग रहे हैं पुलिस से, वो कौन से गाड़ी में है और क्या पुलिस उनके पास पहुंच पाएगी? कोई होप है?
जी देखिए मैं आपको बताऊं कि ये जो गैंगस्टर, ये जो पूरा मॉड्यूल है बिस्नोई एंड कंपनी का जिसमें गोल्डी बरार है, इनके पास इंडियन मेड का जो वेपन्स है वो नहीं है, कहीं से प्रिक्योर करके वो लोग लेकर आए थे। उनके पास जो वेपन्स है, इंडिया टुडे ने खुलासा भी किया था, जो शूटर्स के हाथ में गन दिख रही थी, आप देख पाएंगे कि वो सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है। इसीलिए जो पंजाब पुलिस है वो काफी एहतियात बरत करके अपनी मूवमेंट को आगे बढ़ा रही है, क्योंकि रेजिडेंशियल इलाका है, किसी सिविलियन को कोई इंजरी ना हो, कोई हताहत हो। इस वजह से बहुत बचाव के साथ जो गैंगस्टर है उनको पकड़ने की कोशिश वो लगातार की जा रही है। पंजाब पुलिस इसी मकसद से गई थी कि बहुत सेफली जो 2 गैंगस्टर है उनको कवर किया जाएगा, लेकिन दोनों गैंगस्टर है उन्होंने गोली चलानी शुरू कर दी, फायरिंग शुरू कर दी, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस ने भी घेरेबंदी कर रखी है। नबीला
जी, सिद्धू मूसेवाला के केस में अभी तक कितने लोग अरेस्ट हुए हैं यहाँ पर अरविंद?
देखिए मैं आपको बताऊं कि पंजाब पुलिस के हाथ कोई बड़ी कामयाबी शूटर्स को लेकर नहीं लगी थी। दिल्ली पुलिस स्पेशल सेल ने एक के बाद एक शूटर्स अरेस्ट किए थे, जिसमें कई शूटर्स ऐसे हैं जो अब भी फरार चल रहे हैं। उनको पकड़ने की जो कोशिश है वो पंजाब पुलिस की टीम भी कर रही है। हालांकि दिल्ली पुलिस के सोर्सेज ने बताया था कि उनको कुछ इनपुट्स मिले हैं जो 2 गैंगस्टर के हैं उनमें, लेकिन पंजाब पुलिस को जब ये इनपुट्स मिला है उसके बाद पंजाब जो पुलिस है वो पहुंची है अमृतसर के अटारी इलाके में, जो भारत पाकिस्तान का बॉर्डर है, उसी इलाके में ये इनकाउंटर जो है वो फिलहाल जारी है। नबीला
जी, आप हमारे साथ जुड़े रहिए अरविंद। I'm going to cut across to Satendra Chauhan joining us live as well. Satendra, a quick word on the Atari border chase that we are currently seeing visuals of the cops trying to hunt down 2 of those shooters. They believe that they're in a vehicle right in front of them while the cops closed in on those gangsters. They were shot at. Tell us exactly what we see in the visuals here.
नबीला, बिल्कुल एकदम जो अभी अरविंद बता रहे थे, ये एक सूचना इन्फॉर्मेशन पंजाब पुलिस को मिली थी और पंजाब पुलिस ने तुरंत अपनी कई टीमें, यहाँ तक कि ये बताया जा रहा है कि लगभग 3 कंपनियां पंजाब पुलिस ने लगाई हैं, क्योंकि ये जो गांव है चीका गांव का नाम है चीचा भकना, जो कि बिल्कुल पाकिस्तान बॉर्डर के पास लगता हुआ है और बिल्कुल देहात का इलाका है और इसे ये कहा जा सकता है कि जंगल का भी इलाका है। लिहाजा पूरे इलाके में सर्च के लिए 3 कंपनियां लगाई गई हैं और पूरे हथियारबंद जो है पुलिस के कर्मियों को लगाया गया है। और सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट इसमें पॉइंट ये है कि जब पुलिस ने सर्च शुरू की तो पुलिस की पार्टी के ऊपर काउंटर फायर किया गया इन गैंगस्टर्स के द्वारा, और ये बताया जा रहा है कि मन्नू, कुसा और रूपा, ये जो 2 गैंगस्टर्स हैं और इनका संबंध कहीं ना कहीं सिद्धू मूसेवाला के हत्याकांड से है। और ये इंफॉर्मेशन मल्टीपल एजेंसियों ने पंजाब पुलिस के साथ शेयर की थी और पंजाब पुलिस ने पूरे इलाके को कॉर्डन ऑफ करके वहां पर फिलहाल एनकाउंटर चला है, तकरीबन आधे घंटे तक गोलियां चली हैं दोनों तरफ से और फिलहाल ये बताया जा रहा है कि ये दोनों जो गैंगस्टर्स हैं इनको पंजाब पुलिस ने कहीं ना कहीं कंट्रोल में कर लिया है, काबू कर लिया है। नबीला
जी सत्येंद्र, इतने कितने सारे लोग अरेस्ट हुए हैं अभी तक जो सिद्धू मूसेवाला केस में, मर्डर केस में?
देखिए, जो इंफॉर्मेशन थी उसके मुताबिक 2 लोग हैं जो सिद्धू मूसेवाला मर्डर केस में इस पूरे मामले में अटारी के पाकिस्तान से लगते हुए जो है गांव में छिपे हुए थे। और ये भी हो सकता है कि कहीं ना कहीं ये जो बिल्कुल गांव है चिकचा भिकना जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं, ये बिल्कुल पाकिस्तान की फेंसिंग के साथ लगता हुआ गांव है। हो सकता है कि ये जो गैंगस्टर्स हैं ये पाकिस्तान भागने की फिराक में भी हो सकते थे, लेकिन फिलहाल जो है पंजाब पुलिस की मल्टीपल इंटेलिजेंस के अलावा जो बीएसएफ के जो इंटेलिजेंस यूनिट्स हैं उनसे भी इनपुट लिया जा रहा है। और फिलहाल एनकाउंटर हुआ है, एनकाउंटर के बाद 2 लोग जो जिनका नाम रूपा और मन्नू कसा बताया जा रहा है, इनको गिरफ्तार कर लिया गया है। और इसके अलावा फिलहाल इनके साथ कौन लोग थे, कौन इनको शह दे रहे थे, कौन इनको जो है हाइड कर रहे थे, इस पूरे इंफॉर्मेशन पे पंजाब पुलिस लगी हुई है और थोड़ी ही देर में ये पूरी तस्वीर भी साफ हो जाएगी। नबीला।
Well, to our viewers, the visual that's coming in from the Atari border shows the chase between the police and those gangsters. The police right now hunting down 2 of those shooters who are right now believed to be in a vehicle right in front of them. When the police tried to close in on those gangsters, they were met with gunshots. Here, Satyendra Chauhan, who's been tracking those developments, Arvind Orja also giving us some live updates on this chase. We're seeing an encounter where the police at the Atari border who've got a tip-off. They've received a tip-off that these men, the gangsters, could be hiding at a village along that area. When they arrived at the spot, these 2 gangsters managed to flee, escape in a vehicle, and that chase is currently on. This is the live visual that we bring to you from the Atari border. Satyendra, for more on that. सत्येंद्र, यहाँ पर जो विजुअल आ रहे हैं ये अतारी बॉर्डर के पास है। ये छुप कहाँ रहे थे, जो गैंगस्टर्स हैं वो छुप कहाँ रहे थे और टिप ऑफ मिला है पुलिस को, कहाँ से मिला?
देखिए, मैं जैसा बता रहा था कि ये मल्टीपल एजेंसीज इस पूरे मामले में लगी हुई हैं और पंजाब पुलिस को जो दूसरी एजेंसी है दिल्ली पुलिस के द्वारा इन्फॉर्मेशन मिली थी और बाहर से भी इन्फॉर्मेशन थी और उस इन्फॉर्मेशन पर काम करते हुए पंजाब पुलिस ने, जैसा मैंने अभी बताया, चीचा भिकना गांव है और ये गांव अटारी बॉर्डर के बिल्कुल पास लगता है जो कि भारत और पाकिस्तान की का जो है बॉर्डर है। और इस बॉर्डर से तकरीबन 3 किलोमीटर जब आप रूरल रिमोट एरिया में जाते हैं वहां पर पाकिस्तान और भारत की जो फेंसिंग लगती है उससे सटा हुआ ये गांव है। और ये गांव जो है पूरा एक तरीके से ये कह सकते हैं कि गांव के अगर आप आबादी वाले क्षेत्र से बाहर निकलते हैं तो पूरा कहीं ना कहीं जंगल में तब्दील हो जाता है और वहां पर जो है ये इस तरह के लोग छिपते हैं और यही वो रूट है जहां से ज्यादातर पाकिस्तान से स्मगलिंग के केसेस भी बीएसएफ पकड़ती है। तो यहां पर यह भी आशंका जताई जा रही है कि ये जो गैंगस्टर्स हैं यहां पर छिपे भी हो सकते हैं और यहां से पाकिस्तान भागने की फिराक में भी हो सकते थे। फिलहाल जो पुलिस ने इस पूरे इलाके को कॉर्डन ऑफ किया, जैसा मैंने बताया तकरीबन 2 दर्जन के करीब व्हीकल लगे हुए हैं, पूरे पुलिस की गाड़ियां लगी हुई थी। जब पुलिस ने यहां पर सर्च ऑपरेशन स्टार्ट किया तो पुलिस के ऊपर जो है फायरिंग इन गैंगस्टर्स की तरफ से किया गया और बाद में पुलिस ने तकरीबन आधे घंटे से 45 मिनट के बाद पूरे इस मामले को कंट्रोल में अपने नियंत्रण में लिया है।
जी सत्येंद्र, ये जो पुलिस चेस कर रही है ये कौन सा पुलिस है? हम वी नो दैट सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने सीबीआई प्रोब के लिए मना किया है अभी हाल ही में और एसआईटी टीम फॉर्म किया है प्रोब करने के लिए, मगर ये जो पुलिस चेस कर रही है ये कौन से डिपार्टमेंट की पुलिस है?
देखिए, ये पंजाब पुलिस है। पंजाब पुलिस के जो कमांडोज होते हैं, पंजाब पुलिस की जो रिजर्व पुलिस होती है उसके ये गाड़ियां हैं, आप देख सकते हैं। और पूरा जो एक एजीटीएफ जो एंटी गैंगस्टर्स टास्क फोर्स पंजाब में बनाई हुई है उनके जो है साथ में लोकल पुलिस को भी लिया हुआ है और इन सब जो है एजेंसीज ने मिलकर इस पूरे ऑपरेशन को यहाँ पर अंजाम दिया है। नबीला
जी, so we're looking at the Punjab police now who are trying to hunt down those 2 sharpshooters, and that's the visual that we see right here on our television screens. We believe that after a tip-off, the police tried to chase 2 sharpshooters, 2 gangsters who were linked to Sidhu Moosewala's murder. They were hiding at a village. Soon as the police arrived, these gangsters managed to escape from that spot in a vehicle, and the police now chasing them they've been met with gunshots. In fact, those gangsters also have weapons in their hands and they're trying to attack the police as they chase them. So we're seeing an encounter-like situation that currently unfolds at the Attari border. And these are live visuals coming in, videos of that chase. India Today, of course, keeping a close watch on what happens. Of course, at this point, the police in Punjab have not had much headway when it comes to the shooters who killed Sidhu Musewala. That's precisely what Arvind Ojha also explained to us, that the Punjab police has been really struggling to come to a conclusion on this case, as there have been few arrests, but largely the shooters who gunned down Sidhu Musewala with much precision, they've been absconding for a while. Two of these shooters are suspected to be in that vehicle right ahead where the police is now chasing. Those shooters also are right now armed with weapons. So the police trying to close in on those gangsters in the vehicle that's right in front of them. But unfortunately, because of the arms that they possess, the police also being wary. At this point, we see an encounter-like situation, a chase, a hunt for the gangsters linked to Sidhu Musewala's murder. This is the visual that you see on your television screens. Sidhu Musewala has been over a month since he was gunned down, he was murdered, and the gang has been so active. In fact, they've managed to escape from that scene, the crime scene, and the police are finding it quite hard to come to a conclusion on those sharpshooters. Even though a few arrests have been made, many of those shooters who were part of that execution, the part of that murder, full planned murder, they are still absconding. We believe that two of those sharpshooters are in one of that vehicle, in one car right in front. That's the image that we bring to you right here. The hunt for those gangsters currently on. The black Jeep is what it looks like, where those sharpshooters are seated in. They've, of course, they're trying hard to escape, but the police also very close behind, who are chasing those gangsters. Hopefully, they will be successful in catching them in due course.
Hello.
Sidhu Musewala's murder case intensifying, with the police now trying to chase those gangsters who are in vehicles. They're right in front of those police officers. These are live visuals. Remember, we're bringing to you live visuals, and there we hear gunshots. All right, we got you that live footage where we could hear gunshots, and this is precisely the fear of the police as well, as they are in that white Jeep chasing down those gangsters. They're fearing the fact that those gangsters are also fully armed. While the police are trying to close in on those criminals, they're met with gunshots. Those gangsters are firing back at the police. There seems to be an encounter-like situation, a chase that we're looking at for the shooters of Sidhu Musewala. The police carrying out a massive manhunt along the Attari border. That's where the vehicles are currently on track. The Attari border is where the chase is currently happening. We are seeing those gangsters who are right now. I'm going to take you through the sounds of those gunshots.
Hello.
Well, this seems like a dangerous chase. Undoubtedly, police there risking their own life, because those sharpshooters who are escaping, who are right now on the run, which the police is trying to find, they are armed. They have weapons on them, and they're trying to shoot back at the police. Arvind Ojha joining us for more. Arvind, ये जो shooters हैं जिनका पुलिस चेज कर रही है, उनके पास हथियार है, गन्स है, और वो पुलिस को वापस शूट कर रहे हैं।
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए, जैसा कि मैंने बताया और इंडिया टुडे लगातार ये बता भी रहा है कि जो ये बिश्नोई एंड कंपनी है, इनके पास सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है जो इंडिया के बाहर मंगवाए गए थे, और जो सिद्धू मूसेवाला का मर्डर हुआ था उसमें भी जो सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है जो इंडिया के बाहर से दूसरी कंट्री से मंगवाए गए थे, जिसमें जर्मनी, टर्की है, वहां के वेपन्स है, और उसी वेपन्स ये लगातार पंजाब पुलिस पर गोली चला रहे हैं। इंडिया टुडे के पास एक्सक्लूसिव पिक्चर्स भी है, नवीला, मैं आपको बताऊं, जो ये दो गैंगस्टर छुपे हुए हैं। हमें कंफर्म किया पंजाब पुलिस ने कि इसमें जगरूप सिंह उर्फ रूपा और दूसरा मनप्रीत सिर्फ उर्फ मन्नू, ये दो ऐसे गैंगस्टर हैं जिनका सिद्धू मूसेवाला मर्डर केस के इन्वेस्टिगेशन में नाम आया था। ये दोनों वहां पर छुपे हुए हैं। जब ये पंजाब पुलिस को जानकारी मिली है, उसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस वहां पर पहुंची है। चूंकि ये रेजिडेंशियल इलाका एक विलेज है अटारी के पास, वहां पर जब पंजाब पुलिस की टीम पहुंची है तो गैंगस्टर ने फायरिंग शुरू कर दी है, जिसके बाद आप देख पा रहे होंगे तस्वीरों में पंजाब पुलिस भी फायरिंग कर रही है। दोनों तरफ से गोलियां चलने की आवाज आ रही है। अभी तक क्या कोई गैंगस्टर पकड़ा गया या भाग गया, ये अभी तक क्लियरिटी नहीं है, क्योंकि पंजाब पुलिस के सामने दो इस वक्त चैलेंज है। पहला, जो सिविलियंस है उनको सेव करना, और दूसरा जो गैंगस्टर है उनको पकड़ना। मैं आपको बताऊं, इसके पहले स्पेशल सेल ने कई शूटर अरेस्ट कर लिए हैं, लेकिन ये दोनों जो नाम थे जो सिद्धू मूसेवाला के मर्डर के इन्वेस्टिगेशन में आए थे, ये अभी तक अरेस्ट नहीं हो पाए थे। इन्हीं की टिप ऑफ मिली थी, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस अमृतसर के ये अटारी इलाके में पहुंची है। और ये जो पाकिस्तान से बेहद सटा हुआ ये गांव है, विलेज है, जहां पर टीम पहुंची हुई है और वहां पर लगातार एनकाउंटर चल रहा है। जो सोर्सेस से हमें जानकारी मिली है कि इसमें जगरूप सिंह रूपा और दूसरा जो गैंगस्टर है मनप्रीत सिंह मन्नू, ये दोनों यहाँ पर फिलहाल छुपे हुए हैं, लेकिन इनकाउंटर दोनों तरफ से लगातार जारी है।
जी, ये एनकाउंटर जारी है, and that's the visual that we bring to you right here as our reporters are currently tracking that story. Here are some of those shots where we hear the sounds of gunshots. These are videos that we put for you on our screens. These are live footage coming in from that Atari border, where we see the chase right now on in full swing. These are visuals of the cops. They're desperately trying to reach those sharpshooters who are on the run. They've tried to escape, but the cops, of course, relentlessly chasing those gangsters who are linked to Sidhu Moosewala's murder. In fact, the police, the Punjab police, we believe so far has not had great headway when it comes to clamping down those sharpshooters who are on the run. They've escaped. A few arrests have been made, but not all those shooters have been nabbed by the police. And at this point, this is very important for the police to actually catch those two gangsters, because this would mean 2 more arrests in the case of Sidhu Moosewala's murder. But here we see a dangerous chase here. Police putting their self at risk, chasing those gangsters who are armed with weapons. And that's the gunshot sounds that you hear very clearly in the background. There you have gunshots, shots being fired at the police desperately trying to catch those gangsters, but they're being met with gunshots, putting their own life at risk. The police there are now relentlessly on the hunt for those two gangsters. They know very well where they are. They've got a tip off that they were residing in a village in the vicinity of Atari border. And soon as the police arrived, it appears that these two gangsters quickly fled in a black Jeep. We're going to show you the visual of that car as well. A black Jeep where those gangsters managed to flee with. The police, of course, in that white Jeep trying to hunt those sharpshooters who have killed Sidhu Moosewala. This is a precise piece of information that we get is that 2 of those shooters who killed Sidhu Moosewala are right now on the run, and that's who exactly the police is currently chasing. Shreya Chatterjee, who joins us also for more. Shreya, a quick word on this chase. We are seeing this nail-biting chase where the police now are hunting for those 2 gangsters. They're right now in a car right ahead of the police, but dangerous. They have weapons, they have guns, and they're shooting back at the police. All right, I'm going to try and patch Shreya's audio there. Here we're seeing visuals on our screens, gunshot sounds very clear, audible, while the cops chasing those gangsters turning around to shoot at the police. So the police clearly now putting themselves at risk. We know that these gangsters have very sophisticated ammunition, like our reporter Arvind Ojha, who's been tracking those developments very clearly, giving us an insight as to how they've managed to procure, Bishnoi gangsters managed to procure arms and ammunition from different parts of the world, from Germany, many European countries. They've got real sophisticated weaponry, and they have it all in their arsenal, and now pulling it out to get themselves out of trouble. They're in fact using those weapons to shoot at the police while the police is closing in this chase. Arvind Oja, who is also with us for more. Arvind, बताइए ये जो weapons है, ये gangsters के पास ये sophisticated weaponry ये यूज कर रहे हैं पुलिस के खिलाफ?
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए ये जो दोनों गैंगस्टर हैं, जगरूप रूपा और दूसरा मनप्रीत, ये बिश्नोई एंड गोल्डी बरार, ये दोनों जो गैंगस्टर हैं, जो एक गोल्डी बरार कनाडा में है जबकि बिश्नोई जेल से अपना गैंग चलाता है, ये दोनों इसी गैंग से जुड़े हुए हैं। और सिद्धू मूसेवाला के मर्डर के बाद इन दोनों का जब नाम सामने आया था इन्वेस्टिगेशन में, तब से ये फरार चल रहे थे। इधर दिल्ली पुलिस स्पेशल सेल एक के बाद एक जो शूटर्स हैं उनको अरेस्ट कर रही थी, लेकिन जगरूप रूपा और मनप्रीत एलियस मन्नू ये दोनों एब्सकॉन्डिंग थे, जिसके बाद आज पंजाब पुलिस को जब टिप ऑफ मिली है कि ये जो पंजाब का अटारी विलेज है अमृतसर में, वहां पर जब पंजाब पुलिस की टीम पहुंची है एक विलेज में, जैसा कि आप तस्वीरों में देख पा रही होंगी, जैसे इन दोनों ने पंजाब पुलिस को देखा, दोनों तरफ से अपनी तरफ से फायरिंग शुरू कर दी। जहां तक वेपन्स की बात है, एजेंसीज काफी ज्यादा हैरानी में है, क्योंकि इनके पास से जो वेपन्स है इनके पास वो बहुत ज्यादा सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है, ऑटोमेटिक वेपन्स है और इंडियन मेड नहीं है। कुछ टर्की से मंगाए गए हैं, कुछ जर्मनी से मंगाए गए हैं और शायद यही वजह है कि सिद्धू मूसेवाला के ऊपर जब फायरिंग की गई थी तो 5 से 7 मिनट के अंदर इन लोगों ने 40 से 50 राउंड फायरिंग की थी। तो इनके पास जो वेपन्स है वो बहुत सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है। इंडिया टुडे ने बाकायदा वीडियो के जरिए खुलासा किया था, जो इनके शूटर्स जिन्होंने सिद्धू मूसेवाला का मर्डर किया था, जब वो फरार चल रहे थे उन्होंने एक वीडियो बनाया था। उस वीडियो में बाकायदा वो वेपन्स दिख रहे हैं और वो वेपन्स देखने के बाद ही समझ में आ रहा है कि वो कितने सोफिस्टिकेटेड है, जिसमें ग्लॉक पिस्टल भी है, जिसमें P30 पिस्टल भी है। तो इस तरह के वेपन्स इन क्रिमिनल्स के पास आ रहे हैं खासतौर पे, और जो सोर्सेज है उनका कहना है कि ये गोल्डी बरार कनाडा में बैठकर भिजवाता है इस तरह के वेपन्स, और इस तरह के और भी वेपन्स इस गैंग के पास पहले से है, इन लोगों ने जमा करके रखे, वक्त वक्त पर इसका इस्तेमाल करते हैं। और शायद ये वजह है कि पंजाब पुलिस को मुश्किल आ रही है इन गैंगस्टर का मुकाबला करने में। हालांकि जो पुलिस है वो लगातार इन गैंगस्टर को पकड़ने की कोशिश कर रही है और लगातार दोनों तरफ से फायरिंग हो रही है।
जी, अभी ये जो चेज है कहाँ तक गया है? अटारी बॉर्डर का विजुअल्स हमें मिला है। अरविंद, ये कहाँ है ये लोग, अब पुलिस कहाँ है और ये जो गैंगस्टर्स कहाँ है?
जी देखिए, एक्स्ट्रा फोर्स जो अमृतसर पुलिस है उसने एक्स्ट्रा फोर्स भी बुला ली है, क्योंकि पंजाब पुलिस को, अमृतसर पुलिस को ये पता था कि ये गैंगस्टर कितने खतरनाक है, पुलिस पर भी फायरिंग कर देते हैं। इस वजह से एक्स्ट्रा फोर्स डिप्लॉय की गई थी। चारों तरफ से जो इलाका है जहां जिस घर में ये छिपे हुए थे, चारों तरफ से घेरा गया है और उसके बाद इनको पकड़ने की कोशिश लगातार की जा रही है। लेकिन मुश्किल ये भी है, पंजाब पुलिस के सामने चैलेंज ये भी है कि एक तरफ सिविलियंस को सेव करना है, दूसरी तरफ इन गैंगस्टर को पकड़ना है, ये एक चैलेंज है। लेकिन जो सीनियर पुलिस ऑफिसर उनका कहना है कि वो बहुत जल्दी इस ऑपरेशन को खत्म करेंगे, गैंगस्टर को पकड़ने की कोशिश लगातार यहाँ पे की जा रही है।
अरविंद, यहाँ पर जो पंजाब पुलिस है अभी तक उनको शूटर्स का कुछ अता पता नहीं है। ये जो 2 शूटर्स है ये उनके लिए बहुत बड़ी बात होगी अगर वो पकड़ पाएंगे।
जी बिल्कुल, जाहिर सी बात है। देखिए, अगर बात की जाए, ऑल्दो कोऑर्डिनेशन होता है अलग अलग स्टेट के बीच, जैसे पंजाब पुलिस में ये सिद्धू मूसेवाले का मर्डर हुआ था, लेकिन दिल्ली पुलिस चूंकि ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम पर काम करती है और पंजाब में पिछले दिनों जो विक्की मिड्डू खेड़ा का मर्डर हुआ था उनके अक्यूज को भी स्पेशल सेल ने पकड़ा था। तो स्पेशल सेल ने उस चेन को आगे बढ़ाते हुए जो अदर शूटर्स थे और खासतौर पर जो हरियाणा गैंग को लीड कर रहा था प्रियव्रत फौजी, उस समय कुछ गैंग जो शूटर्स थे जिन्होंने सिद्धू मूसेवाले पर गोली चलाई थी उनको अरेस्ट किया था। लेकिन कई ऐसे शूटर्स थे, खासतौर पर जगरूप रूपा और मन्नू, ये 2 फरार चल रहे थे। इनकी लगातार इनका पीछा दिल्ली पुलिस स्पेशल सेल की टीम भी कर रही थी, पंजाब पुलिस भी टीम कर रही थी। लेकिन पंजाब पुलिस को ये जब टिप ऑफ मिला है कि ये दोनों यहाँ पर शूटर छुपे हुए, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस यहाँ पर पहुंची है, तो जाहिर सी बात है काफी कुछ जानते होंगे, क्योंकि जो 2 मॉड्यूल थे मैं आपको बताऊं, सिद्धू सिद्धू मूसेवाला का मर्डर करने में। एक बुलेरो गाड़ी थी जिसमें हरियाणा के जो शूटर्स थे वो बैठे हुए थे, जिनको प्रियव्रत फौजी वो लीड कर रहा था, जबकि करोला जो कार थी उसमें पंजाब के शूटर्स बैठे हुए थे। वो गैंग अभी तक बस्ट नहीं हुआ है, तो कोशिश यही है कि ये जो दूसरा मॉड्यूल उसको बस्ट किया जाए, जिसको जगरूप रूपा लीड कर रहे थे और मनप्रीत मन्नू वो लीड कर रहे थे। तो ये जो दो गैंगस्टर है, ये बिश्नोई गैंग और गोल्डी गैंग से जुड़े हुए जो पंजाब में उनका काम देखते हैं, तो उनको क्रैक डाउन करना पंजाब के लिए भी, पंजाब पुलिस के लिए भी एक बड़ा चैलेंज है।
जी, ये जब बोल रहे हैं कि बिश्नोई के बारे में इतना कुछ बोल रहे हैं हम, बिश्नोई गैंग इतना पावरफुल है, मगर वो तो पुलिस के जेल के अंदर है, पुलिस के कब्जे में है, फिर भी इनके गैंग मेंबर्स इतने एक्टिव हैं और इतने इन्फ्लुएंशियल है उनके पास। हाँ
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए नबीला, ये अब कोई सीक्रेट नहीं रहा कि जो लॉरेंस बिश्नोई है वो तिहाड़ जेल में बैठकर फोन का यूज करता था, और ये बाकायदा इंडिया टुडे आज तक ने सबसे पहले इस बात का खुलासा किया था जब सिद्धू मूसेवाला का मर्डर हुआ था कि बिश्नोई ही मास्टरमाइंड है, जिसके बाद इंडिया टुडे की खबर पर पंजाब पुलिस और दिल्ली पुलिस दोनों ने मोहर लगाई थी कि बिश्नोई ही मास्टरमाइंड है। देखिए, ये कोई सीक्रेट नहीं रहा कि जो लॉरेंस बिश्नोई है वो जेल के अंदर से ही पूरा अपना गैंग चलाता है। इसके अलावा जो बिश्नोई है उसके ऊपर 50 से ज्यादा क्रिमिनल केसेस है, जिसमें ज्यादातर ये केसेस जेल में रहते हुए ही उसके ऊपर पंजाब पुलिस या फिर अदर स्टेट की पुलिस ने लगाया हो। उसने सिर्फ आज तक एक ही गोली चलाई है, जिसमें 307 यानी मर्डर भी का केस भी नहीं दर्ज है। उसके बाद से ही वो लगातार जेल में बंद है, लेकिन जेल से, चाहे वो राजस्थान की जेल हो, चाहे वो पंजाब की जेल हो, चाहे वो दिल्ली की जेल हो, लगातार वहां पर जेल के अंदर से वो फोन यूज करता है, अपने जो एसोसिएट है जो इंडिया के बाहर बैठे हैं उनसे बात करता है, और जो ये क्राइम का जो सिंडिकेट है वो चलाता है। तो ये बिश्नोई गैंग के लोग हैं, जिसमें रूपा है, जगरूप सिंह रूपा, और दूसरा मनप्रीत सिंह मन्नू है। दोनों की तस्वीरें इंडिया टुडे के पास है। हमने पहले भी इस बात का खुलासा किया था कि ये जो दो गैंगस्टर है, पंजाब से बेस्ड गैंगस्टर, जिन्होंने सिद्धू मूसेवाले पर गोली चलाई थी, तो ये दोनों को पकड़ने की कोशिश स्पेशल सेल के अलावा पंजाब पुलिस भी कर रही थी। अब वो कामयाबी जरूर मिली है, लेकिन ये जो तस्वीरें आप देख पा रही हैं, ये बहुत चौंकाने वाली तस्वीरें हैं कि ये बाकायदा पंजाब पुलिस का मुकाबला कर रहे हैं, उन पर फायरिंग कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि इनके पास सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स है, इनके पास ग्लॉक जर्मनी मेड पिस्टल्स है, इनके पास P30 टर्की की जो पिस्टल है वो पिस्टल है। तो इस तरह के पिस्टल्स, इस तरह के सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन्स इस गैंग के पास है। ये गैंग के लोग कनाडा, इटली, अमेरिका, यहाँ पर रहकर ऑपरेशन चला रहा है, यूरोप में चला रहा है, दुबई में। अभी भी रिसेंटली सिद्धू मूसेवाला के मर्डर के बाद ये खुलासा हुआ कि किस तरह से बिश्नोई ने अपने जो ब्रदर है अनमोल और जो अपना एक रिलेटिव है सचिन, उन दोनों को यहाँ से फेक पासपोर्ट पर बाहर भिजवाया। तो अपने आप में काफी बड़ा गैंग है, बड़ा सिंडिकेट है। अगर ये दो गैंगस्टर जो इनकाउंटर हो रहा है, अगर ये दो पकड़े जाते हैं, पंजाब पुलिस इनको पकड़ती है, तो जाहिर सी बात है एक बड़ी कामयाबी जरूर होगी पंजाब पुलिस के लिए, क्योंकि जगरूप रूपा और जो मनप्रीत मन्नू ये कोरोला कार में बैठे हुए थे, और लगातार दिल्ली पुलिस स्पेशल सेल की टीम, अदर जो एजेंसियां हैं, उसके अलावा पंजाब पुलिस भी लगी हुई थी। जब इनको ये जानकारी मिली कि अमृतसर के अटारी इलाके में जो भारत पाकिस्तान के बॉर्डर का इलाका है वहां पर छुपे हुए हैं, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की टीम वहां पर पहुंचती है, पूरे इलाके को कॉर्डन ऑफ किया जाता है, लेकिन तभी ये दोनों फायरिंग करने लगते हैं। अब फिलहाल की क्या स्थिति है, किसी को गोली लगी है या नहीं लगी है, ये अभी क्लियरिटी नहीं हो पाई है। लेकिन पंजाब पुलिस के सामने इनकाउंटर के दौरान दो बड़े चैलेंजेस है। पहला, ये जो सिविलियंस है उनको सेफ रखना है। दूसरा चैलेंज ये है कि जो गैंगस्टर है जो काफी वक्त से फरार चल रहे हैं उनको पकड़ना है। लेकिन दोनों तरफ से गोलियां चलने की आवाज आपको सुनाई दे रही होंगी नबीला। हेलो
जी, अभी तो द चेज इज स्टिल ऑन। जो गोलियों की आवाज है वो बड़ी क्लियर से सुनाई दे रही है, एंड दैट्स द पुलिस who are trying to chase those gangsters, putting their own life at risk, who are chasing two men who are fully armed. Arvind Ojha tells us that these men have some sophisticated weaponry, and they are now using that against the police officers to escape from the crime scene. The police there were vehemently chasing those gangsters have not had luck so far, but we're bringing to you those live visuals of that chase. The hunt for those gangsters on at this point. Even as we speak, the chase is on. This could be an encounter-like situation. Arvind, अब हम ये जो चेज देख रहे हैं, क्या ये ऐसा हो सकता है कि पुलिस अगर वो उनको पकड़ पाएंगे कि at this point, do you feel that the police will get them alive, or even if it means to shoot them down and kill them, will they go for it?
जी देखिए, ये सिचुएशन पर डिपेंड करता है नबीला, क्योंकि अभी तो जिस तरह से जो दोनों गैंगस्टर हैं वो फायरिंग कर रहे हैं, तो पुलिस के सामने दो चैलेंज है कि कोई भी सिविलियन को गोली नहीं लगे। इस वजह से अगर उन्हें गैंगस्टर पर गोली भी चलानी पड़ी पंजाब पुलिस को, ये एट प्रेजेंट की जो सिचुएशन है जो आप तस्वीरों में देख पा रही हैं, तो जाहिर सी बात है पंजाब पुलिस उसके लिए भी आगे बढ़ाएगी अपना कदम। ये सिचुएशन पर डिपेंड करता है। सिचुएशन तस्वीरों में साफ साफ दिखाई दे रही है कि किस तरीके से जो गैंगस्टर है वो एक जगह छुपकर लगातार पंजाब पुलिस पर फायरिंग कर रहे हैं। पंजाब पुलिस सिचुएशन के हिसाब से ये टैकल करेगी, लेकिन इतना साफ है कि ये जो दो गैंगस्टर है जिनमें मनप्रीत मन्नू, उसने पहली जो गोली चलाई थी सिद्धू मूसेवाले पर AK-47 से जो बर्स्ट फायर किया था वो मनप्रीत मन्नू ने ही फायर किया था। उसके अलावा जगरूप रूपा वो भी फायरिंग में मौजूद था। तो ये दो जो गैंगस्टर है बेहद कुख्यात गैंगस्टर है, डेरेड गैंगस्टर है और इनके खिलाफ क्रिमिनल केसेस भी है। पंजाब पुलिस से वांटेड चल रहे थे और इनको बाकायदा गोल्डी बरार ने कहीं ना कहीं बूस्ट किया था और तैयार किया था सिद्धू मूसेवाले का मर्डर करने के लिए। और मर्डर के बाद जब पंजाब पुलिस भी क्लियर नहीं थी, तब हमने ये तस्वीरें दिखाई थी, वो 8 तस्वीरें जो सस्पेक्ट की लिस्ट में शामिल थे, जिसमें जगरूप रूपा और मनप्रीत मन्नू जो जिसे किस्सू के नाम से भी जानते हैं, किस्सू विलेज का रहने वाला, तो ये दोनों आइडेंटिफाई हुए थे। आज टिप ऑफ मिला है, जिसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की टीम ने कॉर्डन ऑफ किया है, घेरा हुआ है। अब देखना होगा कि कितने देर और ये इनकाउंटर चलता है।
जी अभी एनकाउंटर शुरू कब हुआ? What time did it start today and where exactly was the location where these men were found? क्या पुलिस को कोई भी कुछ भी मिला अभी तक? ये जो विलेज से उन्होंने इनको चेज किया है, उनको कुछ और सबूत मिला है वहां से?
जी देखिए, अभी तक ये इंगेज है और तकरीबन 1 बजे के लगभग जब ये जानकारी मिली थी पंजाब पुलिस को टिप ऑफ मिला था कि ये 2 गैंगस्टर हैं यहाँ पर छुपे हो सकते हैं। उसके बाद पंजाब पुलिस की टीम ये अगली जो इलाका है जहाँ इनकाउंटर हो रहा है वहां पर पहुंची। जो पूरा इलाका है टर्न ऑफ किया गया और उसके बाद ये कोशिश की गई कि जो 2 गैंगस्टर है उनको पकड़ा जा सके, लेकिन जैसे ही पंजाब पुलिस को दोनों गैंगस्टर ने देखा, उन दोनों ने फायरिंग शुरू कर दी। जवाब में पंजाब पुलिस भी आप देख पा रहे होंगे गोली चला रही है, लेकिन जैसा कि मैंने फिर कहा कि जो सिविलियंस हैं उनको सेव करते हुए जो गैंगस्टर है, जो मेन कल्प्रिट है, उनको अरेस्ट करना, ये सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है पंजाब पुलिस के लिए। ये इस चैलेंज को कैसे फेस कर रही है पंजाब पुलिस? जब इनकाउंटर ये पूरी तरह से खत्म होगा तभी ये पंजाब पुलिस के जो सीनियर ऑफिशियल है वो क्लियर कर पाएंगे। फिलहाल दोनों तरफ से फायरिंग चल रही है और जो सोर्सेज है उनका दावा है कि जगरूप रूपा और मनप्रीत मन्नू नबीला वही शख्स है जिसने सबसे पहले फायरिंग की थी, फर्स्ट फायर किया था AK-47 से। और जो सोर्सेज है वो ये बताते हैं कि AK-47 की फायरिंग से ही सिद्धू मूसेवाले की मौत हो गई थी। बावजूद इसके जो शूटर थे जिनके हाथ में सोफिस्टिकेटेड वेपन थे, उन्होंने ताबड़तोड़ सिद्धू मूसेवाले पर फायरिंग की थी AK-47 चलने के बावजूद भी। तो इससे आप समझ सकती हैं कि कितने डेरेड ये गैंगस्टर है, जिसमें एक अंकित सिरसा है, वो तो महज 19 साल का है, लेकिन उसने भी ताबड़तोड़ फायरिंग की थी। तो ये जो 18 साल से 25 साल तक के जो लड़के हैं उनको तैयार किया था बिश्नोई और गोल्डी बरार ने सिद्धू मूसेवाला की हत्या करने के लिए, जिसमें ये जो 2 अक्यूज हैं वो अभी फरार चल रहे थे, जिनको जब पंजाब पुलिस को ये टिप अप मिला है जिसके बाद यहाँ पर इनकाउंटर शुरू हो गया।
जी ये एनकाउंटर अभी भी चल रहा है. That's the visual that we are taking you through. Of course, India Today on top of this story, we bring you all the angles and the live coverage. At this point, the videos that we bring to you here is of that chase of the police of Punjab chasing down 2 of those sharpshooters who are on the run. They've escaped soon after the police arrived at a village after receiving a tip-off. They were believed to be hiding in that village, and when the police swooped in, they swung into action. literally tried to catch those two sharpshooters, but unfortunately were met with gunshots. Those shooters who tried to escape from the scene had very sophisticated weapons and guns. They've shot at the police officers and managed to escape. The police now chasing them relentlessly right behind. That chase is still on, and that's what Arvind Ojha brings to us on the intense encounter-like situation that's unfolding in Athri border. In fact, this is a situation that the Punjab police would have encountered undoubtedly. It's impossible at this point for the Punjab police to find, at least so far, that's what they've displayed, that they've not been able to find those sharpshooters. They've been trying very hard, but no luck with tracking down those sharpshooters who killed Sidhu Musewala. But nonetheless, this, if at all, this encounter or this chase is successful, then it will be a big boost for the Punjab police, who've been desperately trying to hunt down those people who murdered Sidhu Musewala. While there have been a few arrests, many of those sharpshooters are still absconding, and two of them are right now in a vehicle right in front of the Punjab police. They're in a black Jeep. If I can ask my panelists, our producer, to quickly show us that vehicle there, the car, the Jeep in which those two sharpshooters have fled in. That Jeep there is being chased by the Punjab police. The Punjab police in a white Jeep, while the sharpshooters in a black Jeep. They've been chasing them for at least the last hour. And this chase is on with the Punjab police, of course, putting their own lives at risk because of the kind of arms those gangsters have. They've been shooting at the police as well relentlessly. Let me cut across to Shreya joining us on the phone line. Shreya, a quick word on this chase. We know that the encounter-like scene is still on. We're speaking of a live situation that's unfolding along the Athri border, where the Punjab police now are relentlessly hunting those two men. They were tipped off to be hiding in a village. They've escaped in a black Jeep. They have guns, arms with them. They're shooting at the police. While the police tries to close in on them, they're shooting at the police. So this is becoming slightly difficult for the Punjab police. They're putting their lives at risk. But the hunt is on.
Well, absolutely. So, Nabila, the hunt is on. This is near the Atari border that you rightly pointed out. Two people in concern. What we believe that we're learning from our sources are two of the shooters of Sidhu Musewala, Jagdeep Rupa and Manpreet Mannu, are the ones that we're talking about who are there right now, where the Punjab police is trying to nab them. This after they had received a tip-off of them hiding in one of those locations near the Atari border. The moment the police tried to close in on them, they escaped in a black Jeep. But the police is right now tracing them. They're tracking them down. There has been exchange of fire between both the police as well as these two shooters that we're talking about. They're both armed, Nabila. That in itself brings the sensitivity of the matter, that it's a live situation, and the police is also have to look out of the fact that there could be, citizens out there, and even when there's a live encounter, they have to cordon off the area. So given that it is a very sensitive zone right now, as we speak, when this live operation is underway by the Punjab police, important point to point out, Nabila, Manpreet Mannu, the person we're talking about, is the one who had shot at Sidhu Musewala for the first. He was the one who used his AK-47, shot at Sidhu from his Corolla car. That is an information that we had got earlier itself. And now, among the two, Manpreet Mannu is also present along with Jagdeep Rupa. Both of them are the shooters of Sidhu Musewala. They were present in the Corolla car where they traced and shot at Sidhu. And now the Punjab police is out carrying out their investigation, trying to nab both of them who have been fleeing for quite a long time. 29th of May is when Musewala was gunned down. It is almost going to be 2 months now. And that's the reason we see that the Punjab police is taking the matter very sensitively and they're trying to save them down. And that's the reason there's an exchange of fire that is underway between the Punjab police and these two accused.
You know, this is a difficult situation for the Punjab police because they've got to ensure that no civilians come under fire and they are not the victims of this encounter-like situation. You have people there, of course, gathering only to see what's happening. Of course, there's many distractions for the Punjab police, undoubtedly, but those criminals clearly will not have any priorities in mind. For them, their priority is to escape by hook or crook, even if it means to mow down a civilian who comes in their way. So it is a tough situation for the Punjab police at this point.
Absolutely, Nabila. And when we talk about an live encounter, when it's on way, the first and foremost importance of the police is to cordon off the area to ensure that in between a fire, there's no civilian who's brought between fire, and that's something that the Punjab police is keeping in mind while they're conducting this operation between them and the two shooters that we're talking about in the zone that we're talking about. This is the Atari border. Remember, it's also porous. There is a chance that the police believes that they could easily run into a hideout, and that's the reason the Punjab police is not giving up. Those visuals that we got is a clear establishment of the point that the Punjab police is on their toes. It's tracing the vehicle, that black Jeep in which Jasdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu are right now. And the Punjab police is also tracing them, as we've learned so far from the preliminary information that this was a tip-off that the Punjab police received, which they followed, and then they came close in contact with Jasdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu. They fired at the Punjab police, tried to escape the spot, but the Punjab police is trying to chase them down. As we talked, Nabila, as you rightly pointed out, that this is a live operation unfolding between the shooters of Sidhu Musewala and the Punjab police. And when we talk about shooters, no ordinary shooter. He was the one who attacked Sidhu Musewala first using his AK-47. That in itself points out that how heinous and how serious these shooters that we're talking about, because they're armed. The police could be harmed in this fire. So they're taking that sensitivity in mind while carrying out this live operation, the visuals of which we have also accessed and we can see on our screen.
These are ruthless gangsters, like you rightly pointed out, Shreya. They carried out murder of Sidhu Musewala in broad daylight. And with no fear of consequences, they all came, stormed in to that spot where Sidhu Musewala was just about entering his car. In fact, he was chased by those gangsters and gunned down. So these men really have no fear of the law. They know very well that they'll escape. At least so long they've managed to flee from the law. They've not, the cops respectively have not been successful in nabbing them. And they've been on the prowl for years. It's not new for them. They know every nook and corner of the area where they're hiding. So for them at this point, their focus would be to, of course, escape the cops and rush to a hiding spot. But for the police, go on. For the police, of course, this is going to be a big success if they manage to catch them.
Well, absolutely. This will be a big success, especially for the Punjab police, because remember, so far the number of shooters that's been caught off Sidhu Musewala has been done by the Delhi Police's special cell. In itself, this is the first operation that we can say where the Punjab police has successfully traced down the remaining two shooters that we were talking about for all this while, because we know out of 6 shooters, 4 were arrested, 2 were on the run. These are the 2 shooters that we're talking about, Jasdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu. And now the Punjab police for the first time has successfully traced them down. So most likely we will see this as a successful operation, or at least that everyone is hoping, because the operation is currently underway. But as you were pointing it out, Nabila, how dreaded are these criminals? Remember, it's not the Punjab police just who was keeping an eye out for them. It was the Delhi Police's special cell. It was other investigative agencies that were actually looking out for these criminals. Despite that, the fact that they could hide out and they could maintain their hideout for almost 2 months in itself proves the kind of nexus they ran in this belt that we're talking about, which runs from, say, Delhi, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab. And we also know that the other shooters who were caught, they had also traveled to Maharashtra and Gujarat. So imagine the nexus that's running deep of these gangsters, that for 2 months they're running around and the police is finding it extremely difficult to trace them. But now successfully the Punjab police has indeed traced the remaining 2 shooters, Jasdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu. The encounter is live, and probably in a time from now we will get that information coming in that it was a successful operation by the Punjab police, because even the entire Punjab police force might be looking up and waiting for it, because this would be the first time that they would have actually nabbed the shooters of Sidhu Musewala.
If you can give us some clarity, Shreya, on the number of arrests so far in this case. How far has the Punjab police managed to crack down on the entire nexus?
Well, so far as we talked earlier, Nabila, the Punjab police had approximately arrested 13 people, but none of them were the shooters of Sidhu Musewala. They were all associates. For example, we know the one arrested was Thackeray, Kekra was the one who received the entire location, gave that information that Sidhu Musewala has kept out from his house, relayed the information to Goldie Brar, but he wasn't the shooter. When we speak about the shooter, Nabila, it was the Delhi Police's special cell that had arrested the 4 shooters that we're talking about. It is the first time that we see the Punjab Police make a headway when it comes to arresting the shooters of Sidhu Musewala or coming close to arresting to the shooters of Sidhu Musewala, and that's Jagdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu. They were the remaining 2 shooters. The others, which include Priyavrat Fauji, who were arrested by Delhi Police's special cell, but Punjab Police so far couldn't arrest any of the shooters of Sidhu Musewala, and probably that is why this operation also becomes extremely important for that police force, because they're also drawn a lot of flack on not being able to clue in on the shooters, out of which 4 has already been arrested by special cell. The remaining 2 that we're talking about, the live encounter is right now.
All right, Shreya, we have some big information coming in that one of the cops has been injured in this encounter. The Punjab Police, like I mentioned time and again, have been putting their own lives at risk, are trying to chase those gangsters, those 2 shooters who are right now in a jeep right in front of them. The cops are chasing them. Those gangsters have weapons on them. They've been firing at the police. And in the midst of this, 1 cop has been injured in this encounter. This is the latest that we get. Shreya, over to you. A police officer, as expected, has been injured. What more do we know?
Well, that's the information that is trickling down, that 1 police officer in this live encounter has been injured. Unfortunate information that is coming in, but they are definitely risking their lives to carry out this operation successfully, and that's the reason we see they're not giving up, because as we were talking, Nabila, that these 2 shooters, Manpreet Manu, Jagdeep Rupa, we're talking about, they are dreaded criminals. They have weapons and they do not fear anything. They definitely do not fear the law and order, and that's the reason we right now see that this cop who's a part of the Punjab Police, who's actually tracking these 2 shooters, he's now been injured. This is the initial information that is coming in. We only hope that he is fine and this is not a major injury, but the operation is still under its way. We are yet to receive more information on the update on whether they have been able to at least track them completely, or they have been able to get out these 2 shooters. That's what the Punjab Police is looking at. They're trying to make this a successful operation, and hopefully they should, given the fact that they had finally made a trace of Jagdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu at the Attari border in Punjab.
All right, very unfortunate. We see one of the police officers has been encountered in this encounter. One of the police officers there injured at this point. This is the latest information that we get. Sidhu Musewala's murderers, who are currently carrying with them some really sophisticated ammunition. They've been firing at the Punjab Police, who've been chasing them. It's been over an hour now. The chase is on near the Attari border. Again, Shreya, to give us some clarity. Shreya, how many shooters were involved in the murder of Sidhu Musewala? Could you give us some clarity on how many shooters were involved? And what we do know is that Punjab Police have not had success in nabbing even one of them so far.
Well, absolutely, Nabila. 6 shooters were in total involved in the murder of Sidhu Musewala. That included Priyavrat Fauji, that included Ankit Sirka, that included Sachin Bhiwani, and that included the other one, Kashish. So 4 of them were arrested by the Delhi Police's special cell. The remaining 2 that we were talking about, who are yet to be arrested, is Jagdeep Rupa and Manpreet Manu. To break it down, the ones who've been arrested, there were 2 cars who were tracing Sidhu Musewala and then attacked him. There was a Bolero, there was a Corolla. The Bolero module has been busted by Delhi Police. All the 4 shooters who were part of it have been arrested. It's the other Corolla car that we're talking about. The shooters inside the Corolla car wasn't arrested. Those 2 shooters are the ones who are in that live encounter right now with Punjab Police. That's Manpreet Manu and Jagdeep Rupa. As I had mentioned earlier, Manpreet Manu was the one who shot at Sidhu Musewala first before anyone firing. That was a clear direction that was given by Goldie Brar to Manpreet Manu, that he'll be the one who would shoot at Sidhu Musewala for the first time and use his AK-47 to shoot at that Thar that Sidhu Musewala was travelling in. And subsequently, we do know that he was then gunned down by these shooters. 4 of them have been arrested by special cell, as I mentioned. 2 still on the run. Punjab police has finally successfully traced the 2, and the live operation is right now under its way. But we'll still have to wait for some time to get in an information that whether this has become a successful operation. But so far, the unfortunate incident that's come in is about a police officer from the Punjab police receiving an injury in between this live encounter.
Very, very tragic. One Punjab police is now injured in this encounter. Remember, we're seeing the chase that still continues. We got some of those visuals coming in from the Attari border where the Punjab police literally rushed to the spot where they were said to be hiding post a tip-off. And soon after the chase began, those criminals have been shooting and firing at the Punjab police. In the melee, we hear one of the cops has been injured. He's right now wounded. And the police, of course, struggling to nab those 2 men, but they've not given up. That's what's commendable at this point. The police, despite being met with gunshots fired by those criminals, those gangsters who are right now on the run in a black jeep, despite that, the Punjab police now have roped in more numbers to try and zero in and corner those sharpshooters. This will be a first headway, if at all they manage to actually catch them. This will indeed be the first arrest of sharpshooters, the real men who killed Sidhu Musewala. This will be a big headway in the investigation. Remember, there's been several requests made in the top court asking for the case to be handed over to CBI, but that hasn't been approved as yet. So the SIT probe is on. The state police is currently investigating this matter, and they're of course trying to prove their prove their merit. At this point, it's also difficult for the Punjab police because so far they've not had success. This chase, and if it is successful, if they are successful in clamping down those 2 gangsters who are on the run, then they will have something to boast of in this investigation. The Punjab police will have at least 2 arrests of sharpshooters, the real men behind Sidhu Musewala's murder, for them to put on record. So far, it's been an investigation which has had no headway when it came to actual shooters who killed Sidhu Musewala. They were absconding. They have had a great stint with escaping from the police for over a month. One should remember how dreaded these gangsters are, that at least over a month and more, these men have been evading the cops in different states. A lookout notice has been issued on many of them, but yet somehow they've managed to escape police from different states. Most of these gangsters who are linked to Lawrence Bishnoi come from many parts of North India. They are right now hiding in several parts of the country, at least 6 of the sharpshooters, 2 of them right now in that car which the police is chasing. But the remaining 4, we believe that they are hiding in different corners of the country. So the police now, it's an uphill task for them to reach out to the other 4, but they have 2 in focus right now. 2 of them right ahead of them in a black jeep that the police is trying to chase down. They're trying to catch those 2 shooters who are right now armed with weapons themselves. They could turn around any minute. If at all the police close in on them, they are capable enough to gun down the police officers. They have such sophisticated ammunitions and weapons with them that they're managing to escape so long. It's been an hour and more since the chase is on. And those gangsters are very clearly smart enough to escape from that spot by firing at those police officers. They know very well that they have the strength, they have the ammunition, so they're literally targeting the police while the police comes close to them. It's a very close shave for the police officers. One cop has also been injured in this encounter. The police desperately trying to reach out to them, but it's certainly not going to be easy as they also fear for their own lives. Remember, the police themselves are worried of the weapons that those gangsters have, so it's going to be hard for them to go very close to that vehicle, but yet at the same time, they've got to use strategy and a plan to ensure that these men are cornered. And even if they do shoot, then the police are not target. Of course, visuals that we bring to you here shows a quick glimpse into the kind of chase that's currently on even as we speak this minute. Shreya, for more on that. Shreya, we know the family of Sidhu Musewala are so desperate to have... All right, we're going to try and cut across to Shreya. Here, this one police officer that has been injured. We believe, was shot at by those gangsters, and he's now been injured. That cop has been injured in that encounter. Manjeet Saigal for more on that. Manjeet, a quick word. Yahan par the chase that is still on, where has it led? Now, what area is the police at, and are those targets in sight? Are those two men, those two gangsters who are currently on the run, are they in sight? Have the police lost sight of them, or are they still in focus?
Well, Navila, the name of these gangsters is Jagrup Rupa and Manpreet Manna. These are the gangsters who are involved in Sidhu Musewala's brutal murder. Jagrup Rupa is in fact a sharpshooter who had used AK-47 rifle to kill Sidhu Musewala. Encounter is currently going on in a village located near the Atari border. Police sources saying that one of the gangsters has been killed. So more details are awaited. The encounter is currently on. Navila.
Right. We like you said, one cop has been injured. So is that cop still in that vehicle? Do we know anything about that police officer, if he's doing okay? And tell us more about those gangsters. We believe that they are armed with really sophisticated weapons. They have some really sophisticated guns with them. That's what they're using to shoot at the police.
Well, Navila, police investigations have revealed that state-of-the-art weapons were provided to these sharpshooters. Jagrup Singh Rupa is a Tarantaran-based sharpshooter who was previously jailed and he was on a parole. He ran away after he was on the run after killing Sidhu Musewala. They were also spotted on a bike. He is believed to have killed Sidhu Musewala using AK-47 rifle. He was on the run, but somehow police got a tip-off and it was found that they were hiding in a village located near the Atari border. The encounter is currently on. Sources say one of the gangsters has been neutralized, and in this encounter, one cop has also been injured. He has been moved to the local hospital, Navila.
Well, that is huge piece of information, Manjeet, that you're bringing to us, that one of those gangsters has been neutralized. This is what is suspected. That's what you hear by and large by sources, that one of those gangsters could have been killed in this encounter. And let's not forget that these two men are sharpshooters. They've managed to kill Sidhu Musewala with much precision. The number of bullets that were showered on Sidhu Musewala, these sharpshooters are fairly good at what they do. In fact, that's the skill that they've used to even target a police officer. They managed to injure one cop who's chasing them at this minute. What more do we know of this one gangster being shot at? What information do we have if they've neutralized him?
Well, the gangster who has been killed in this encounter, he is yet to be identified, whether it is Jagrup Singh Rupa or Manna. Manna is believed to have supplied vehicle to the killers who had done a recce at Sidhu Musewala's home. And Jagrup Singh Rupa is a sharpshooter. He has a criminal background. He was also involved in narcotic smuggling in the past. He also worked as a illegal weapon courier, and also facing many cases under Arms Act. So he is the gangster and sharpshooter who had killed Sidhu Musewala using AK-47. More details are awaited as the encounter is currently going on. Police officials have not revealed the identity of the gangster who has been killed in this encounter. Nabila.
All right, this is a huge development. Manjeet tells us that one gangster could be killed. Of course, we're trying to get some concrete information on this front, but which of those gangsters has been shot dead, that needs to be ascertained. 3 cops injured, 1 gangster has been killed. This is the information that we get prima facie. We're going to take you through much of those updates as the chase is still on. The police still on the hunt for those men. They're right now on track. They're seeing their target in focus, but those gangsters are armed. They have sophisticated ammunition. The police, of course, very cautiously closing in on these gangsters. It'll be the biggest development and the first success, if at all, the police achieve to arrest these 2 sharpshooters in Sidhu Musewala's murder case. We're going to slip into a short break. We'll be right back for more on this. public health, all political parties traveling from different parts.
Armed with facts,
Looking at political back.
she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold, and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.